A happier version of me. Book 8 of the Destiny Clark Saga. Written by Cindy Ray Hale. Text, copyright 2020 by Cindy Ray Hale. Production copyright 2024 by Cindy Ray Hale. Chapter 1, Destiny. My bedroom door slammed open, and a girl's voice sang out, "Surprise! Hannah? What are you doing here?" I asked with wide eyes. "I need retail therapy, so I'm taking you to the mall." She came closer to my desk. "It's Friday night, and you're sitting in your bedroom all alone doing homework. You need retail therapy, too. What else am I supposed to do?" I said. "It's not like I have a boyfriend anymore." I immediately regretted saying it after the words left my mouth. I could have my choice of 2 boyfriends right now, but I'd decided I needed this time to clear my head. "You're supposed to go to the mall with me," she insisted. I considered her words. It seemed strange that Hannah was the one trying to drag me out of the house on a Friday night. Shouldn't it be the other way around? Ever since Hannah had gotten pregnant, she had really been suffering. I'd never seen her so cranky as she'd been these last few months. Maybe a trip to the mall was exactly what she needed to cheer up. I smiled over at Hannah. "What would I do without you?" Hannah caught her reflection in the floor-length mirror, propped against the wall, and paused. She pulled her shirt up and inspected her tummy. The tiniest of baby bumps was forming. "Can you feel the baby kicking, yet?" I asked. "No." "How many weeks along are you?" "I'm 15 weeks, she said. "When are you supposed to start feeling the baby kicking?" "Probably within the next month. I read online that most first-time moms feel the baby moving by about 19 or 20 weeks. That's when I'm going to the doctor to find out the gender," she said. "Have you looked into adoption agencies, yet?" I asked. She shook her head. "Not yet." I bit my lip. My heart ached when I thought about Hannah's situation. I wasn't sure I'd be able to give my baby up for adoption. But the alternative was to finish high school with a baby, or drop out. I'd heard Acorn Creek High had childcare for their students with babies. Enough talk about this. "Let's go have a girls' night," Hannah said. "I need something cute to wear then," I said. "Look at you. Even pregnant, you're adorable." She had on an oversized, graphic t-shirt, ultra-skinny jeans, and Converse. Her hair was pulled up into a neat bun on top of her head. She must have really been feeling better. I hadn't seen her looking that nice since she found out she was pregnant. Even at the Valentine's banquet, she'd looked a little worn down. Humming, Hannah dug through my closet. She pulled out a sheer, yellow polka-dotted shirt and tossed it to me. "Put this on with the jeans you're wearing." She plugged in my flat iron and rummaged through my makeup, selecting a brown palette of eyeshadow and light pink gloss. 15 minutes later, I wore the yellow blouse, my hair was styled, and Hannah had given me a full face of makeup. "Okay," she said. "Let's get out of here." We left the house and hopped into her car. "I love the new car smell in here," I said. "Most new cars come with that scent pre-installed," she said with a straight face. "Oh, really?" "Yep. So what are we shopping for?" I asked as the car sped down my long driveway and along the winding roads leading to the mall. It was about a 10-minute drive to get to the more crowded part of town where the shopping was. "I need more clothes," Hannah said. "Are you worried you will show soon?" I asked. "Obviously." "Sorry, that was a stupid question," I said. "It's okay. But yeah, I'm freaking out about it. It's not like I can talk to anyone about it. Besides you and Isaac, of course. My parents still don't know. They're so clueless. They're too wrapped up in their business. My little brother Lucas doesn't know. I've literally told no one other than you, Isaac, and Evan. And the doctor, but she doesn't count." "Have you thought about going to therapy?" I asked. "You could just tell your parents you're not yourself and need to see a therapist. They'd ask too many questions. I like them oblivious." But Hannah, they will find out anyway. The longer I can hide it, the better. Why? Because, right now, my life is peaceful. When they find out, they'll completely freak. I'll be grounded forever. I won't be allowed to see Evan anymore. You don't know for sure, I said. They don't even want me to hang out with you, she said. Because you're a Mormon, and they're afraid I might convert. I clenched my teeth. It hurt so much that Hannah's parents would treat me that way. Before Hannah's mom found out I was a Mormon, she really liked me. But then she learned the truth and acted like I had leprosy or something. At least Hannah was rebellious enough to still come see me. So many things had changed for me because Hannah had come into my life. It was a huge part of why I was willing to keep her pregnancy a secret, even when I was the one being accused of being the pregnant one. Because I loved Hannah. I knew everything she did for me, and I didn't forget that or take it for granted. Thanks for picking me to be your retail therapy buddy tonight, I said. Anytime. You know, I love me some shopping. What are you going to do while you're at school? It's not exactly easy to hide a belly under our uniform. For now, I can wear a hoodie, but eventually, it'll get too hot for that. The polo shirts are good at hiding a belly, I guess. Yeah. It's just tough because everything has to be tucked in. And my pants are getting tight around my waist. I'm hoping I can find khakis with a stretchy waistband. And we don't have to tuck in the white button-downs. If I find one that's a little stretchier, then I'll be good to go. Maybe people will just think I got a little pudgy around the middle. I won't show until summer, anyway. We hit several stores and were able to find a pair of stretchy khaki pants and a white shirt with stretchy panels in the sides. I found the white shirt buried on a clearance rack at the back of one of those trendy stores that always changed out their stock. I'm starving, I said, as we walked out of the store with Hannah's new finds. Want to hit up the food court? Hannah asked. Sure. I have money with me. I'm craving Chinese food, she said. I want Chick-fil-A. My mouth watered just thinking about their chicken sandwich. We wove through the crowd as we headed toward the food court. As we drew near our order destinations, Hannah nudged me. Hey, Preston and Michael are here. We approached their table. They were unfolding Chick-fil-A sandwiches. Hey, guys, I said casually. What are you two doing here? Michael asked. Retail therapy. I kidnapped Destiny for a girls' night. Hannah beamed at me. Preston pulled out the chair next to him. Take a seat, he said, gesturing to me. I held back a blush. I wasn't sure I trusted myself to sit so close to Preston. We're actually going to grab some food, I said. But we'll be right back. Can you watch my stuff though? Hannah dropped her bags in the chair next to Preston. I bit my lip. Why would she ask him to take care of them and not Michael? Was she trying to keep me away from Preston so I'd stay focused on Isaac?
Chapter 2, Preston. Hannah returned with her food from the Chinese food place well before Destiny made it to the register since the line at Chick-fil-A was long. She set her tray of orange chicken down next to me. Thanks for watching my stuff. She moved her bags to the floor and took a seat. No problem. But I frowned. Hannah had seen me ask Destiny to sit next to me. She'd been pushing Destiny toward Isaac from the start. She probably didn't like the idea of Destiny dating me. A brilliant idea popped into my mind. What if Hannah was the key to getting Destiny? All I had to do was get to know her better, and she could see for herself that I was the better guy. Where's Megan? Hannah asked Michael. She's working tonight. Where does she work? Hannah asked. Over at Kroger as a cashier, Michael told her. Oh, Evan just started working there, too. Yeah, Megan mentioned that she saw him there, I said. She'd also told me she saw him hitting on some other cashiers. I'd felt bad for Hannah when I heard that. Michael balled up his wrapper and wiped his face with a napkin. Well, I'm still hungry. I'm grabbing ice cream. He scraped his chair back and carried his tray to the garbage. I turned back to Hannah. Is everything okay with Evan and you? She looked away for a minute. We have our good days and bad days, you know. Megan told me something about him, and I'm not sure whether I should tell you, I admitted. Well, now you have to tell me, or I'll go crazy with curiosity, she said with wide eyes, leaning forward in her chair. It's not good, I warned her. Tell me anyway. Megan told me she's seen Evan hitting on other girls at work. He's even made a comment or two to her. Hannah bit her thumbnail. You don't look surprised. I'm not. Why are you staying with him then? I asked. You deserve better than that. Hannah let out a heavy sigh. It's more complicated than you can imagine. I have a big imagination. She searched my face. You seem like a trustworthy guy. I pushed down the triumph at her words. Talking to Hannah was paying off already. I know Destiny trusts you. Heck, Michael trusted you with his sister. But before I tell you this, promise to keep it a secret. I lifted an eyebrow. The conversation was taking a surprising turn. Are you in trouble? I asked her. Just promise, she said. I promise. She lowered her voice. She was only a foot from my face. I'd never seen her so close before. Her eyes were a gorgeous shade of blue. I'm pregnant. Her confession knocked the wind out of me, but I pulled myself together quickly. Out of everything Hannah could have told me, those were the last words I would have expected. And Evan is the father? I kept my voice low. Yes. My mind reeled. Hannah was a lot more complicated than I'd thought. Does Destiny know? Yes. Michael? Not unless Destiny told him. She wouldn't do that, I said. No, I don't think so either. What are you going to do? I asked, studying Hannah in a new light. She wasn't just Destiny's friend anymore. She was a girl in trouble, and she needed help. Evan wanted me to get an abortion at first, she said. But I was considering adoption. Was? I asked. She looked down at her food. She'd barely touched it. I don't think I can go through with it anymore, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. So you hope that if you stay with him, you'll have the chance to raise the baby together? I don't know. She buried her face in her hands. I don't know anything anymore. If things are bad with Evan now, imagine how hard they'll be when you have to deal with a baby. What if the baby gets sick or has colic? What's colic? Hannah asked. It's where the baby cries all day, every day. Her eyes grew into giant orbs, showing the whites. That can happen. Yep. I'm not sure how common it is, but I know it's a thing. I don't know if I can do this. That's my problem. I go back and forth every day. Something happens, like I see cute baby clothes, and it makes me want to keep my baby, and then I see a mom struggling with a newborn, and I'm terrified. Or I'm singing in Primus or just sitting here in the mall with you guys, and I don't want to give that up. I want to finish high school and go to college and then get a good job. And maybe when I'm 25 or something I can worry about getting married and then I can think about kids. This wasn't ever the plan. Stuff happens that isn't in our plan. My mom has cancer. It sucks, but we figure out how to survive it. I'm sorry about your mom. I shrugged. I was used to people telling me they were sorry about her situation. I didn't even know what to say to them anymore. The whole situation still felt unreal, like one day, I would wake up and realize it was all a horrible nightmare. But so far, no luck. Hannah propped her chin up, elbows on the table. You surprise me. Why's that? I asked. You reacted differently than I thought you would when I told you the truth. I pondered what she said for a minute before answering. You thought I would judge you or act awkward about it? Yeah, I did. I won't judge you. What's the point? You need a friend, someone in your corner to help you through a rough time. I know a lot of people who would want me to suffer from the consequences of my decisions, Hannah said. Like who? My parents, Hannah said right away. You haven't told them? I asked. How do you think I'm still going to Bethel? She retorted. My parents run a Christian music production company. Do you think it will look good for them to have a pregnant 16-year-old daughter? They wouldn't have to tell anyone. There are ways to keep it quiet, especially if you went the adoption route. Evan's parents aren't much better. That's why he wanted me to get an abortion. He doesn't want to deal with the trouble. It keeps it quiet. No one would have to know. I don't know, I said. Don't you have to get your parents' permission in the state of Tennessee? I have no idea. I haven't looked into it. I'm not killing my baby. Well, I go to public school. People talk about it in the halls. You forget I went to your school just last year. I never heard anyone talking about it. I don't know. Maybe the junior girls are dealing with it more than the freshman girls. That makes sense, Hannah said. Destiny came up with her food. That was the most ridiculous wait ever. She sat down across from Hannah, slinging her purse across the back of the chair. I'm starving, too. I should have known better when I saw that long line. Michael came back with his ice cream cone. You just got your food, Destiny? The line was killer, Hannah said. You should have gotten Chinese food with me. I'm starting to think that, she said. Hannah dug into her chicken. As I watched her, I saw Destiny frown from the corner of my eye. Was she jealous of the attention I'd been giving Hannah? I'd only wanted to get to know Hannah better, so she'd stop pushing Destiny so hard toward Isaac. I hadn't meant to make Destiny jealous. But it gave me hope that I was gaining ground against Isaac.
Chapter 3, Destiny. Sitting next to Hannah in the cafeteria, I opened my brown bag lunch, pulled out my peanut butter sandwich, and frowned. Mom had bought the cheap bread again. I opened the Ziploc bag and sighed. A steaming tray with a plate of chicken Alfredo, with broccoli and a chocolate chip cookie, plopped down next to me. It smelled divine and looked 100 times more appealing than my sandwich. This is for you. Isaac scooted the tray toward me. My heart melted like butter on hot noodles. Get a hold of yourself, Destiny. I couldn't accept the food from him, or I'd be right back where I'd started. Confused with a muddled heart, I pushed the tray back to him. That's so nice of you. But I already have lunch today. You should eat it yourself so you don't have to go back through the line. Isaac nudged the tray back. I already ate. I insist. I eyed him suspiciously. You couldn't have had time to eat already. We had a potluck in our history class. I cocked an eyebrow at him. Was he lying? Nobody ate potluck in history class. Don't give me that look. You can ask Michael. He was there, too. Michael's over there eating his lunch, I pointed out. Isaac shrugged. He could probably use the extra calories. Coach will burn it out of him later. In that case, you need this delicious, hot meal more than I do, I insisted with a sweet smile. If you don't eat it, I'm just going to throw it away. Good grief, Hannah sputtered. Just say thank you and eat the food before it gets cold, Destiny. If you want him to eat so bad, give him your sack lunch. Fine, I muttered, taking the tray and shoving my paper bag in Isaac's direction. How is it that Hannah's always talking me into stuff? It's a gift, Hannah said with a straight face. I twirled the pasta on my fork and took a bite. It wasn't as good as my mom's, but it sure beat the sandwich I'd brought. I looked up to see Isaac watching me carefully. What? I'm just making sure you're enjoying it. It's delicious. Thank you, I said in a curt voice. Isaac seemed satisfied by my answer and peered into my lunch bag. He pulled out my baby carrots and bit into one and watched me with his gorgeous dark eyes. I had to look away because it was doing funny things to my insides when he looked at me like that. Like he wanted to take me in his arms and kiss me until my knees collapsed. Isaac had his chance to kiss me like that. I had to keep reminding myself that. He'd given it up. He'd chosen work over me and never taken me back to the hammock spot. He argued with me when I told him I wanted to see him more. He was a driven guy. I got that. But did he have room in his life for anything other than his ambitions? And after I told him I needed space, he felt the sudden urge to pay attention to me? It was annoying and downright endearing. And the endearing part was the problem. Hopefully, he would get the hint and give me the space I desperately needed. But as I looked across the table at him, I had a feeling he wouldn't be going anywhere.
Chapter 4, Preston. I tossed the bowling ball down the lane, and it clunked into the gutter. I frowned. My bowling skills were a good reflection of how my night had been going. When I had planned this night, I had envisioned something private, personal, but somehow it ended up growing bigger and bigger. I'd invited Destiny, and she'd invited Michael, who had invited Megan. I was okay with that. But then Destiny invited Hannah, who, to my annoyance, had invited Isaac. And now the entire room felt crowded. Of course, he'd shown up. He'd been so focused on work before, but now it seemed like he had all the time in the world to hang out around Destiny. Maybe challenging him to go for her had been a bad idea. Isaac stood and took his turn. He was beating all of us by a long shot. He bowled another strike and turned away from it, giving Destiny a high five. "How are you so talented at everything you do?" she asked him. I held back a groan. Listening to Destiny gush over Isaac was the last thing I wanted. Michael was up next, and he left a few pins up. He went once more and knocked them both down. Megan followed, leaving about half the pins up after both shots. She took her seat next to Michael and then leaned over to whisper something to him. He smiled and spoke softly back to her, getting a smile out of her in return. "You okay?" Hannah said next to me. "Yeah. I'm fine," I said, watching Isaac lean over to whisper something in Destiny's ear. She pushed him away and crossed her arms. He frowned before looking away and rearranging his expression to look more neutral. I held back a smile. Maybe it wasn't going so well between them after all. "You don't look fine." She turned and looked at Destiny and Isaac. I didn't want Hannah to launch into a defense of how she thought they were right for each other, so I changed the subject. "Where's Evan? Wasn't he supposed to be here tonight?" "Yep. He was." She crossed her arms with a murderous look in her eyes. I shuddered and decided that I wouldn't want to get on her bad side. "You know what?" she said through clenched teeth. "I think I'm finally done." "Done?" "Yep. Done." "You mean with Evan?" "Yep. That's what I mean. I can't take his lies anymore. He makes all these big promises, and then I'm sitting around waiting on him like an idiot. Why can't people just do what they say and say what they mean?" I asked. "It's called honor. If you make a promise to someone, keep it, or go to them and apologize with a decent explanation. Even a lousy explanation is better than just ignoring someone." "You're up, Hannah," Destiny said, taking her seat next to Isaac. Hannah bowled, and then I followed. When I was done, I sat back down next to her. "Have you heard anything from Evan, yet?" "Nope," she said, tucking a strand of wavy, brown hair behind her ear. "And at this point, I don't even want him to show up." "Are you breaking up with him, then?" I asked. She pulled out her phone and tapped in a message. She shoved her phone into her purse and turned to me, her hair whipping around her shoulders. "I just did." "You broke up with him over text, like, just now?" She said with a nod. "If he can't respect me, then why should I respect him enough to dump him to his face?" Yikes, I really didn't want to get on her bad side. "What are you talking about?" Destiny asked, her brow furrowed as she stared at Hannah. "I just broke up with Evan," she said. Isaac stared at Hannah, eyes wide. "Are you okay?" Destiny let out a slow breath, her hands flat together, the edge pressed to her nose and lips in worry. Yeah, Hannah said in a strange, detached voice. I'm great. Whose turn is it? Megan and Michael had stopped talking and were staring at Hannah. Whose turn is it? She snapped. Megan glanced up at the TV that displayed the score. Oh, it's mine. I had to do something before Hannah torched the place from sheer fury. Do you want to grab some ice cream, Hannah? She crossed her arms in front of her and scowled. No. I'm fine. I don't want to bail on everyone. I'm buying. I gave her my most charming grin. Did you just turn down free ice cream? Destiny teased. That doesn't sound like you. Hannah, Isaac said. Just go. We'll play for you guys. Hannah let out a loud, dramatic sigh. Fine. Destiny jumped from her chair and crushed Hannah with a hug. Everything will be okay. You hear me? Destiny stared into Hannah's watery eyes. Go get yourself some ice cream and eat as much as you want. She jabbed a thumb in my direction. This guy's good at helping a girl with a broken heart. Take it from someone who knows. You're in good hands. My heart twisted in my chest at Destiny's words. Was that all I'd been to her? A guy to help when her heart was broken just so she could go back to the guy she really wanted? Megan wrapped her arms around Hannah. You got this. Megan stepped back. Go have fun. Hannah smiled at her and wiped away a tear with the back of her hand. Ready to go? I asked her, pushing my negative thoughts about Destiny from my head. Hannah was in trouble, and that was what really mattered. Yeah, she said, wiping away another tear. My car or yours? I asked as I pushed open one of the glass doors that led to the parking lot. Yours, please. I'm not up for driving right now. You got it. I led the way to my truck. I opened her door and helped her climb up, smiling to myself. The last thing I expected to be doing was helping a pregnant girl up into my truck, but I was glad to do it tonight. I grabbed a box of tissues from the floorboards next to her feet and handed it to her. I'd used them more than my fair share lately. Thanks, she said, pulling one out and dabbing her eyes with it. No problem, I said. I climbed into my side and buckled up. Do you like cold stone? I asked. Is that even a question? Hannah asked, the snark coming back into her voice. I'll take that as a yes. Yeah. Cold stone it is then. For the rest of the drive, Hannah chatted, and some cheers slowly eased back into her voice. By the time we parked in front of the ice cream shop, she was almost back to her normal self. I helped her down from the truck, and when we got to the counter, she ordered like a pro. She rattled off the flavor of ice cream she wanted with each added ingredient without a moment's hesitation. Chocolate with extra chocolate and crushed up chocolate cookies and brownie chunks. I'd only been to Cold Stone twice before, so I took longer to order. After testing out 3 different flavors and hemming and hawing over which to choose, I finally settled on cake batter with gummy bears. When we sat down with our ice cream, Hannah took her first bite and sighed with pleasure. You are seriously my favorite person right now. You're welcome. Yes. That was a thank you. She dug into her massive pile of ice cream scoops. You seem to know exactly what you wanted. I come here a lot, she admitted. Did Evan bring you here? She shook her head. I usually come at night by myself. I've been getting these huge ice cream cravings, and my mom's on this massive dairy-free kick. So you sneak out? Yep. When you have a back staircase, it's easy to come and go whenever you want. Why didn't you ask Evan to go with you? I did at first. But then he made excuses. I'm pretty sure he's been tired of me for a while. He's just staying with me out of obligation. I should have broken up with him the minute he told me he wanted me to get an abortion. How long ago was that? I asked. It was around the time Michael had his birthday party. That long ago? That was back in January, and it was April now. I'd hung out with Hannah at that party. She'd been pregnant all this time. It was weird to think about. When is your baby supposed to come? In August. You still don't look pregnant. I don't know why. I should, after all the junk I've been eating, she said, patting her belly. Are you even showing at all? Sorry. Is that a weird question? I asked, feeling my cheeks redden. Kind of weird. But what isn't weird about this situation? Hannah said. I can tell a difference, but only when I look right at my tummy with my shirt pulled up. How does Evan feel about having his baby growing inside you? I mean, does he want to touch your belly to say hi to the baby or anything? I knew I was pushing the limit with all my probing questions, but I was so fascinated with her predicament that the questions just kept coming out of my mouth unbidden. Hannah looked away, and I worried I'd gone too far. I was doing a terrible job at comforting her tonight. So much for me being an awesome, supportive guy. He didn't at first, she said, surprising me with an answer. But within the last few weeks, he's been rubbing my belly and telling me he wanted to stay with me and raise our baby together. He wondered if it's a boy or a girl. He even talked about names and how we could get an apartment together. Whoa. No wonder she'd wanted to stay with him. He was painting a picture of them being a family together. That would be one thing if they were in their early 20s, but Hannah had only finished a year and a half of high school. She still needed to be a kid. She probably thought his suggestion was the right thing to do. Maybe it felt right to her to raise her baby and shower her child with love. How did you feel about that? I asked. She blew out a puff of air, shoving her spoon into her ice cream again. At first, I thought he was nuts, but as he kept talking about it, I saw this life we could have together. I don't know how I was so stupid. He can't even commit now. She shook her head. The only option for my baby really is adoption. I can find a nice couple who can't have kids, and my baby can have the best life possible. Tears slipped down her cheeks. Hey, I said, scooting my chair closer to her and putting my arm around her small frame. It will be okay. No, it's not, she said, burying her head into my shoulder just like Destiny had when she'd been heartbroken over Isaac in her treehouse. I messed everything up. I let him talk me into taking things too far. I wasn't ready. It all happened so fast. I should have stood up to him, told him no. He won't hurt you again. You did the right thing tonight by breaking up with him, I told her. How do you know he won't hurt me again, she asked. He can only hurt you if you let him. You can't stop him from being a jerk. He will make his choices, but you don't have to let him or his choices be a part of your life. What if he won't let me put the baby up for adoption, she said, lifting her head from my shoulder. I hadn't thought of that. Did he have rights as a father to keep her from giving up the baby? This time I didn't have an answer for her, and it left me feeling helpless.
Chapter 5, Destiny. I sat on the porch swing and looked idly out at the blooming trees. The dogwoods were in full bloom, and leaves were sprouting on the trees all around my home. A gentle evening breeze lifted my hair as I rocked the swing back and forth. I leaned back and closed my eyes, enjoying the peaceful moment. Preston's truck came around the bend in the driveway, appearing from between the trees. He parked out of my line of sight. Had he seen me? And if he had, did he want to talk? I missed sitting and talking with him. I missed those cold days where we sat together in the treehouse. Sometimes we didn't even talk. Just having him there was such a comfort. It had been so wonderful that it was a miracle he even spoke to me at all now after the way I'd betrayed him. He appeared around the bend in the sidewalk, giving me a wave. Hey, I said. What's up? I just finished mowing lawns. I wasn't far, and I thought I'd stop by. I want to talk to you about Hannah. Sit down, I said, patting the seat next to me. Is she okay? She told me what's been going on with her, he said, choosing his words carefully. I thought so, I said. Your protective side came out at the bowling alley, and I had the impression you knew. It was nice of you to rescue her. She was about to fall apart. He drew his eyebrows together in determination. I couldn't just let her break down. You did the right thing. She told me that Evan wants her to keep the baby, he said. And she gave me permission to talk to you about this, just so you know. I nodded. It makes sense. That's why she's been staying with him all this time then. Except, she's not with him anymore. Yeah, he was pretty upset at school today about the breakup, I said. He didn't seem that upset when he was who knows where Saturday night, Preston said. I know. He said he'd been called into work and he'd totally forgotten about bowling, I said. I hope she didn't believe that, he said. Megan texted a friend who was working Saturday night, and he wasn't there. You would think he'd come up with better lies, he scoffed. I guess he forgot about Megan being able to find out the truth and report back. But when you act like a jerk, it always comes back to bite you in the butt, eventually, I said. I couldn't live like that. I nodded solemnly. I think Isaac still has a thing for Aspen. The words popped out unexpectedly, but I didn't wish them back. Why do you say that? Preston asked, his green eyes fixed on me. She's back together with Will, and I can tell it bothers him. I can understand how he feels, Preston said, staring at the smooth concrete of my front porch. I bit my lip. He would understand that. He'd been saying and indicating for days that he still had feelings for me. What about Hannah? I asked in a teasing voice, hoping to lighten the mood. You think I like her that way? Preston asked. I was only taking her out for ice cream to cheer her up. You know I wouldn't date someone outside the church. Anyway, I like someone else. He nudged his knee against mine. I leaned forward to hide my blush behind a curtain of hair. There he was again, hinting he wanted me back. He swept my hair back over my shoulder and tilted my chin toward him. I shivered at his touch. When I met his gaze, my lower lip trembled. I couldn't do this. My heart was still too confused. I blurted the first thing that popped into my head. How's your mom doing? He must have sensed my shift in mood because he dropped his hand from my face and looked out into the blossoming trees in defeat. He pressed his lips together before he finally spoke. She's hanging in there. Barely. Is she taking her depression meds now? I asked. I think she is, he said. She seems to be more stable, mentally. But her body is taking such a hard hit. His voice dropped to a whisper. I don't know if she'll make it. You can't talk like that, Preston, I said with fervor. Your mom has to make it. You need to stay positive. His shoulders drooped. But I don't know that. I'm just trying to brace myself for when it happens. If it happens. And what's the point of that? You're putting yourself through all this pain too soon. Right now, your mom needs you to be upbeat and strong. Your family needs that, too. I'm tired of being strong for everyone. What about me? When do I get to be the one who's allowed to feel scared? He buried his hands in his hair. Gosh, this all's so hard. I feel so beaten down. I put an arm around his shoulders and tried to ignore the way the hard muscle beneath my touch made butterflies flit through my tummy. I'm sorry, Preston. I can't tell you how much I think about what your family is going through. You're always in my prayers. He turned to me. Gratitude shone in his eyes. That means a lot. I'm so sorry for everything that happened. You didn't deserve any of it. Tears formed as I thought about the pain I'd caused Preston. It made me sick to my stomach to think about the agony he must have gone through. As much as I wanted to take him in my arms and tell him how much I still loved him, I couldn't. Because my heart didn't belong to him. It was split in two. And so, I couldn't make Preston's hurt go away. It wouldn't be right to give him false hope like that. But I could still show him kindness and support as a friend. I squeezed his shoulder and leaned my head against him. I'm still here for you, Preston. He covered his hand over my hand resting on his shoulder. Thanks. Your mom is a fighter. She's a good woman. Have faith in her. And if you need to break down, it's okay. You know where to find me if you ever need to talk.
Chapter 6, Isaac. The morning we were to leave on our trip to Nashville, I spotted Destiny as soon as I parked my truck in the parking lot. "Good morning," I said cheerily. "Hey." She climbed out of Michael's car. They must have skipped seminary since we were leaving before it would be over. Mr. Bird wanted to give us plenty of time to enjoy Nashville before the competition began. Michael opened the trunk, and she grabbed her backpack from the car floor and draped her black choir dress over her arm. She looked so cute and sleepy in her jeans and Bethel hoodie. "You look sleepier than usual," I told her. She yawned in response. "I was up late texting Hannah." "Is she okay?" I asked. Destiny shook her head, in the middle of another yawn. "She misses Evan." "You don't think she'll go back to him, do you?" "I don't know. Maybe you should talk to her. There have been complications." "What do you mean? How could it get worse than it already was?" "I don't have her permission to tell you." "Is she here, yet?" I asked, swirling around to scan the parking lot for her car. "I don't see her." It figured that Hannah would run late when it was a wake-up early day. She struggled with early mornings even before her pregnancy, and it went downhill from there. "We'll catch up to her," I said. "In the meantime, let's get your stuff out of here." "It's okay. I've got it," Destiny said. Michael had already pulled his stuff out of the trunk and stood by, waiting for Destiny to get her stuff so he could lock up. I scooped her bag from the trunk before she could protest. "Do you have anything else up front?" I asked. She tried to scowl at me, but I could see her holding back a smile. "No. That's it." Michael locked up the car without a word. Was he mad that I was trying to get back together with his sister, or did he still hate me in general? Destiny and I walked over to the bus. Mr. Bird had chartered a nicer bus for this trip than our last trip, and we put our luggage in compartments underneath the bus. The seats near the front were set up with a table and seats that faced each other. A few choir members already sat there playing a card game and howling with laughter. Destiny picked a seat a few rows back from them. She put her backpack on the seat next to her. I picked it up and sat next to her. She gave me a dirty look. I was saving that seat for Hannah. "I'm sure she'll understand." Destiny mumbled something under her breath about how I would never give up. I pulled a blanket from my backpack and offered her half. She refused to take it. "Suit yourself," I said. "It's the fuzziest one I have." "I wouldn't know. It's not like I'm welcome in your home." "I'm sure that will change one day." "Yeah, right," Destiny muttered. Hannah came onto the bus and saw us sitting together. Her face lit up like she expected me to give her the good news that Destiny and I were back together. I gave her a subtle shake of the head, and her face fell. She took a seat across the row from us. Evan was sitting at the back of the bus with a bunch of other baritones. Destiny leaned her head against the back of the seat and fell asleep within minutes of the bus taking off. We hit a bump in the road, and she stirred in her sleep. "So tired," she mumbled. She grabbed the blanket from me, covered herself, and snuggled against me. I froze. Had she forgotten in her sleep that we weren't together anymore? I breathed in the smell of her freshly shampooed hair from where it fell against me in silky waves. My heart pounded in my chest so wildly that I was surprised it didn't wake her up. Every second I spent with her felt like a gift I didn't deserve. I put an arm around her, and we stayed that way for the next hour. Jessie was sitting with her troop of girls, and she kept giving us dirty looks. Now and then, I'd catch her making a passive-aggressive comment. It looked like she wasn't taking being single so well, considering how she was throwing the same daggered looks at Aspen and Will, who were just as cuddled up in the same way as Destiny and me. Only, Jessie probably had no idea that Destiny and I had broken up. I was around Destiny every spare moment I could find, so naturally, everyone thought we were still together, and Destiny hadn't bothered to correct anyone who'd made the assumption. I found that fact very interesting. After about the first hour on the road, Destiny stirred. She sat up and stretched, rubbing her eyes with the back of her hand. She looked so sweet when she first woke. Her hair was a little mussed from where her head had been resting against me. "You get a good nap in?" I asked. She jerked fully awake, her eyes huge, pulling away from me. "Oh, sorry. Was I snuggled against you that whole time?" "You don't need to apologize," I said with a grin. She narrowed her eyes at me. "Let's pretend that didn't happen." "Not a chance." She rolled her eyes and looked around. "What time is it?" "It's around 8. "I'm starving," she said, bending down to rummage in her bag. She pulled out a granola bar and a water bottle. "Nice hair, Destiny," Jessie said with a smirk. With a self-conscious look on her face, Destiny reached up to smooth it down. I held back a retort. Feeding Jessie's fire wouldn't do anyone any good. The best thing to do with her was to either act like her insult was a joke or a compliment. "That's so nice of you to say, Jessie." Even the "I just rolled out of bed" look is amazing on Destiny. But she can pull off anything, so it's not much of a surprise. Jessie looked away, a perplexed look on her face. Destiny looked up at me with wonder in her eyes. "Thank you," she murmured. The way she was looking at me made me feel like I'd just made the first touchdown of the football season. "Not a problem," I breathed, my voice husky. For just a moment everything felt perfect. I knew it wouldn't last.
Chapter 7, Destiny. Ever been to Opry Mills before? Hannah asked as she and I walked into our hotel room with Abigail and Layla, two of the other girls from the alto section. Mr. Bird had booked the boys on the 3rd floor and the girls on the 4th floor. We weren't allowed to go into rooms of the opposite gender. "Nope," I said, hauling my bags over into one corner and dropping them. "It's some of the best shopping in Nashville. My dad's parents live nearby, so my mom's taken me to shop there a lot," Hannah said. "You'll love it." "Sounds fun." Hannah unzipped her overnight bag, a pink and gold Kate Spade tote, and pulled out a curling iron and makeup. Layla had platinum blonde hair and a thick southern accent. She sat on the front row of the alto section because she was tiny. I didn't know her well, but she'd always reminded me of a debutante. She took her Louis Vuitton bag into the bathroom to touch up her makeup. "Come on, Destiny," Hannah said. "Let's get ready for the mall. You look like you've been asleep for the entire trip up." "I was for most of it," I said. "How did the pregnant girl have so much energy while I was exhausted?" Abigail didn't seem to care about primping. She lounged on a bed with a thick, leather-bound novel that looked like one of the classics. Her auburn hair was long and loose, with a slight natural wave to it. She sat next to me in Primus. She was quiet for the most part, but she was a good singer and always got the tough-to-hear notes right. I'd asked her about it once, and she told me she'd been playing the violin since she was 4 and had learned to pick out tough-to-hear notes from a chord. Hannah finished perfecting her curls and then stood me in front of the mirror. "You're getting too comfortable around Isaac. Don't forget how many girls have their eyes on him. You need to make sure you always look your best." Layla and Abigail left the room before Hannah and I finished getting ready. I bit back a retort about how I didn't have a reason to look good for Isaac. Instead, I asked, "How do you have so much energy today?" "I think I'm turning a corner. I feel better today than I have in weeks." "That's so good to hear," I said. "I know the first trimester is supposed to be the worst." "It did get a little better as I got into the second trimester," Hannah said, gently pulling a curled section of my hair out of the curling iron. "But I've still felt like garbage for most of the time. The worst part is throwing up and the never-ending exhaustion. It feels like the baby is sucking me dry." "I guess it takes a lot out of your body to make another person," I said. "You're telling me," she said. Hannah must have noticed that I'd gotten quiet, because she perked up like she was trying to pull me out of a sour mood. You look hot, my friend. Let's go down there and show you off to your man. He's not my man. She waved a hand, dismissing my words. He might as well be. I bit my bottom lip. If Hannah was taking this kind of attitude about Isaac and me, it wasn't a good sign. I was too lax in keeping my walls up around Isaac. He'd been tearing them down bit by bit every day. I had to work harder to build them back up again before it was too late and I was completely under his spell.
Chapter 8, Isaac. Destiny and Hannah showed up in the hotel lobby soon after I had texted Destiny, asking where she was. "Did you get my text?" I asked. Destiny pulled her phone out of her purse and flipped it open. "Oh yeah. I have it now," she said with a shrug. "You look beautiful," I said. She turned away from me. "Thanks," she mumbled, and my heart pinched. I'd hoped that after snuggling on the bus, she liked me better. Mr. Bird came into the lobby and announced that the bus was out front, ready to take us to the mall. We were free to eat lunch somewhere in the mall, and then we had to meet back up at the bus at 1:30. Destiny slid into the same seat she'd had before, and I made sure to sit with her again. She didn't look happy, but she didn't ask me to leave either. "Destiny, look at this one," Hannah said, holding up a woven scarf the color of the ocean in the Bahamas. She held it up to Destiny's eyes and turned her toward a mirror. "Look how it makes your eyes pop." Destiny stroked the scarf. "I love it." She draped the scarf around her neck and fluffed her hair around it. "You're right. It does make my eyes look good. And all scarves are only $5 today," Hannah sang. "Wow. That's cheap," Destiny said. "Right?" Hannah squealed. "This place rocks." She breathed deeply of the store's air. "Don't you love the smell of new clothes? It always puts me in the best mood." Shopping really was therapy for Hannah. I didn't believe it until I saw it in action. Since ending it with Evan, she'd been stuck in depression. Seeing her like that made me want to beat the crap out of Evan, shove him up against a wall, and tell him to stop breaking my cousin's heart before I broke his face. "Look at these, Destiny," Hannah exclaimed again. She pulled out a pair of dangling earrings. They reminded me of something a belly dancer would wear. She held them up to Destiny's ears. "Look at how they peek out from beneath your hair, just this flash of gold when the light hits just right." Hannah was right, they really would look nice on her. Destiny brushed her fingertips over the earrings, and her eyes sparkled. "You should get them," Hannah prodded. She looked at them with longing before shaking her head. "I don't have the money for stuff like that right now." "They're only $4, Hannah said. "When was the last time you bought something nice for yourself?" "I don't remember," Destiny said, her voice flat. "I'll pay for it," I spoke up. "That's a great idea." Hannah snatched the earrings and the scarf from Destiny and gave them to me. "No," Destiny said, her face reddening. "I'm not going to let you do that." I stepped toward her. "What if I want to?" I asked. She took a step back from me, her eyes wide. "We're just friends, Isaac. Remember?" I stepped closer. "I remember." I put a hand on her arm. She stared up at me, and her lips parted. I expected her to pull her arm away, but she didn't, so I continued, dropping my voice. "And I'd like to buy my friend a scarf and a pair of earrings." "Wow," Hannah said, looking between us. "Is it me or is it getting really hot in here?" Destiny shook her head like she was waking from a spell and wriggled away from my grasp. "Hannah, you're right. I should treat myself." She took the items from me and headed to the counter. Hannah stood dumbfounded as she watched Destiny pay at the register. Then she sighed. "Sorry," she mouthed, turning to me with a guilty look. I shook my head and gave her a reassuring smile that I didn't quite feel. I wasn't angry with Hannah, but I was disappointed that I lost my chance to do something sweet for a girl I cared about. Destiny returned with her purchases in a colorful shopping bag. "Where to next?" she said in a cheery voice as she sauntered from the store like she was taking a victory walk. Hannah and I exchanged a glance and followed her. We passed about 3 stores, and Hannah stopped walking, a small gasp escaping from her. I followed her gaze to see Evan with Layla, holding hands like they were an item. "No wonder she was primping before heading to the mall," Destiny said. "I'm going to be sick," Hannah said, holding her midsection. "Let's find her a place to sit down." I led the girls to a nearby bench. Hannah sank into the seat, despair written all over her face. "I want to go back to the hotel room. I need to be alone." I wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Hannah was the closest thing to a sister that I'd ever had, and she'd had one bad time after another lately. I wanted to punch Evan hard. I pulled out my phone and called Mr. Bird to let him know Hannah was sick, and he arranged for Hannah to be taken back to the hotel early. After she left, Destiny and I returned to our walk through the mall. "I'm wondering if it was a mistake to send Hannah back to the hotel by herself," I admitted to Destiny a while later. "I was just thinking the same thing," she said. "Maybe we should have stayed with her to keep her from getting depressed." Worry clouded Destiny's face. "I hope she's okay." "Maybe I should call and check on her," I suggested. A look of relief came over Destiny, and her shoulders relaxed. "Good idea." She picked up on the first ring. "Are you okay?" I asked. "Destiny and I are worried about you." "I'm fine. I don't want you to worry about me. You need to focus on Destiny. Take her to a nice lunch." "I'm exhausted anyway. I didn't get much sleep on the bus, and my bed is calling to me. The hotel room is nice and empty, and I'm taking advantage of that while I can." I chuckled. "Okay. Have a good nap." I hung up and turned to Destiny. "Ever been to Rainforest Cafe?" "Is Hannah okay?" she asked, dodging my question. "She's excited to have a quiet, empty hotel room all to herself. She's pretty worn out." Destiny nodded like that answer was acceptable. I checked my phone to see what time it was. "We have time left to grab food. Want to check it out?" I pointed to Rainforest Cafe, which had appeared as we turned the corner. She bit her lip, staring at the sign like she was making a huge decision. "Sure," she finally said. She jabbed a finger at me. "But this isn't a date." "No. Of course not," I said, putting my hands up in defense. "Just 2 friends having lunch." She seemed satisfied with that answer. We went inside, and the hostess led us to a booth. "This place is cool," Destiny said, looking at mechanical rainforest animals peeking from the fake trees all around us. She looked over the menu, smiling at the themed descriptions of the food. "Everything looks so good. I don't know how to choose." "You should try one of their specialty drinks," I suggested. "It's too much money." She wrinkled her nose as she stared down at the menu. "It's fine. Go for it," I said. "I'm paying." She shut the menu and gave me a challenging look. "I don't think so. We agreed this wasn't a date." She ordered a water and the cheapest sandwich on the menu. After she finished her sandwich, she picked at the crumbs on her plate. I suspected she was still hungry. "Will the 2 of you be ordering dessert this afternoon?" the server asked. "No, thank you," Destiny said, still picking at the crumbs on her plate. I was stuffed from the burger and fries I'd eaten. I repressed a smile. "I'll have the sparkling volcano." A few minutes later, the popping of a sparkler caught our attention, and Destiny drew in a sharp breath as a brownie made to look like a volcano and filled with vanilla ice cream came to the table. It was topped with chocolate syrup and a lit sparkler. The lights danced in Destiny's eyes as she brushed a strand of hair from her face, and my insides tugged at me. My fingers ached to touch her hair again. That is seriously cool. I blew out the sparkler and dug into the side of the volcano with my fork. Destiny sat and watched me eat with ravenous eyes. When I couldn't stand putting her through any more torture, I said, I will never be able to finish this. You can have as much as you want. She snatched her fork and dug out a decent amount of ice cream and brownie. When the bill came, she reached for it, but I snatched it before she could. Isaac. My stomach twisted when she said my name. She slapped a 20 down on the table. That's my portion. I held up the receipt so she couldn't see it. That's way more than your share. There was no way I was letting her pay. That's to cover my portion of the tip and half the dessert. She was determined to make this as hard on me as she could. I scooped up her money and gave my debit card to the server. When we walked out of the restaurant, I tucked the 20 back into her purse when she wasn't looking. I knew she didn't have the money for eating out at a nice place like Rainforest Cafe. I'm stuffed, Destiny said. That brownie volcano was so good. You might have to roll me out of here. I chuckled. We'd better hurry to the mall entrance, she said, checking her phone. It's almost 1:30. Can you make it there? I joked. I might have to waddle a little, she said with a smile. It was good to see her smile. Hopefully, my food will be more digested before we have to perform. Just watch me get a horrible stomachache right before we go on stage. Don't jinx yourself, I said with a laugh. When we got back to the hotel, Destiny and I split to go our rooms to get ready for the performance. I had a room with Evan, Michael, and Josh. When I opened the door to my room, I spotted Evan, alone and unzipping his garment bag and pulling out the pieces of his tux. Disgust welled up inside me at the sight of him. Doesn't take you long to move on, does it? Evan didn't even bother looking at me. Mind your own business, Isaac. This is my business now. I just watched you smash my cousin's heart. Whatever. Hannah's the one who broke it off. She doesn't get to be sad. I grabbed the collar of his shirt and yanked him toward me. His eyes flew wide open. She gets to be sad whenever she feels like, I growled. After what you've done, you should show a little more respect. He wriggled under my grasp, and I released him. I don't know why I'm even bothering with scum like you. Evan stumbled back a few steps, rubbing at the spot where I'd grabbed his shirt. The door opened, and Josh showed up with a few bags from the mall. He must have begged Mom for a bunch of money for shopping. He looked between us. What's going on? Nothing. I glared at Evan, daring him to say a word to Josh about what had just happened. Evan turned away, pulling out the rest of his tux. I changed into my tux and spritzed on some cologne. Destiny loved the way it smelled. I remembered when she told me how much she liked it when I took her to homecoming, the night we'd first gone public with our relationship. I'd given her my hat that night. I wondered if she still had it. I'd since replaced it with another, but she loved the way my old one smelled. We met in the lobby again, this time in our formal wear. I spotted Destiny standing with Hannah and Abigail. Hannah was shooting dark looks across the room at Layla and Evan, who were standing together. Aspen and Green emerged from the hall together, holding their music folders. I turned from them and headed to Destiny. Her hair was down and curled, tiny sections of it twisted and pinned at the back of her head. I reached up and lifted a curl. I like your hair like this. She shuddered under my touch but then pulled away. You can thank Hannah for that. She's the genius with the curling iron, Destiny said, acting like my touch hadn't affected her at all. Hannah, you're amazing, I said. At least someone thinks so, she said with a dark look in her eyes. I followed her gaze straight to Evan and Layla, standing closer than anyone in a just friends relationship would. Pregnant with his baby or not, Hannah was better off without Evan. The guy was way too immature to deal with a pregnant girlfriend, let alone a baby. Why was he having unprotected sex in the first place? Was he that stupid? And then wanting her to get an abortion? Did he think he could erase his dumb choices by killing off the child he'd helped create? We loaded up in the bus again, this time heading to the Opryland Hotel. Mr. Bird stood at the front of the bus and addressed us before we took off. Here's the plan for the rest of the day. We will perform at 3:30. After that, you are free to explore the hotel, grab dinner, and then we meet back at the bus at 7 to go back to our hotel. We unloaded at the entrance of the hotel and stayed together as a group as Mr. Bird led the way to the conference room where the competition was being held. This place is incredible, Destiny said, looking at the grand staircase and a mega-sized chandelier. First time here? I asked. She nodded. You'll love it. They have tons of gardens with waterfalls and a bunch of little shops. My mom always drags us into those. She goes crazy, buying stuff. It always drives my dad nuts because he knows everything's overpriced. But she says it's okay because it's part of the experience. My mom loves it so much she convinces my dad to take her at least once a year. I don't think I've ever met your mom, Destiny said. She sounds fun. I think you'd like her, I said. You would, Hannah said. She's awesome, and she's amazing at what she does. She sells houses like it's nobody's business. She could probably sell you a ketchup popsicle on a snowy day. Destiny laughed. That's disgusting. She's persuasive, Hannah said. You sure you're not blood related to her? Destiny asked. I sure hope not, I said. That would make me kind of inbred. Destiny laughed, a musical sound that made my heart rate pick up. I wanted to touch her soft cheek and pull her toward me. We arrived at the room where the competition was being held and only had to wait a short while before it was our turn to go on stage. We started with the entire choir singing a few numbers, and then the soloists stepped up to the microphones. Aspen, Destiny, and I had to share the mic in the middle. I stood in the middle, between them. First, I sang A Heart Full of Love with Aspen. I pushed my acting to the limit, gazing into Aspen's eyes like she was the love of my life. Aspen lit up as I sang, and the look on her face reminded me of when we were together and she was about to kiss me. At the end of the song, I felt an uncomfortable pull between us, but I continued with my act of being deeply in love. Without warning, Aspen leaned in to kiss me. I felt it coming, and before her lips could touch me, I spun toward Destiny like I hadn't noticed. But Destiny had. From where she stood, she had a clear view of Aspen. When I looked back at Destiny, her face held an unreadable expression. But I was sure she'd seen me evade Aspen's kiss. Aspen had tried to kiss me on stage once before. She'd caught me off guard that time, and it had caused a lot of problems in my relationship with Destiny. I understood why Aspen had made her kissing move back then. Destiny and I had just started dating, and it was hard on Aspen to see me with someone else. But it had been so long since then, and she seemed so happy with Green. Why would she want me? Was she that convinced by my acting that my feelings for her were real? I clenched my jaw. Maybe I needed to scale it back. My mind raced back and forth about why Aspen would try to kiss me and if Destiny thought I had wanted to kiss Aspen. I was so lost in thought that I almost missed my cue. Thankfully, Destiny had the first part of our section of A Little Fall of Rain, so I got up to speed rather quickly once she started singing. Her voice was full of emotion as she sang Eponine's final words to the man she loved before passing. I had to fight back a smile as we finished our song. We'd totally rocked it. But the whole dying thing and staying in character thing kept me from being able to show my excitement at how well we'd done. We finished with a grand finale of One Day More, which earned us a standing ovation. We filed off the stage with the choir following and joined the audience to watch the other choirs performing. Mr. Bird had told us in the hall we needed to meet back in this room for when they announced the winners of the competition. As we watched, an idea occurred to me of something I could do with Destiny, something for which we had plenty of time.
Chapter 9, Destiny. Isaac turned. Hey, I'm done watching. Do you want to go explore the gardens now? Sure. What could it hurt to spend time in the gardens with Isaac? I'd made it plenty clear we were only friends. I need to talk to you about something. My shoulders tensed. What is it? I didn't like what Aspen did on stage, trying to kiss me like that. I was careful to keep my face neutral, but secretly, I felt relieved. It's not a big deal. He studied me, and I wasn't sure he bought my nonchalant attitude. Good, he said in a light voice that sounded a little strained. Glad that's cleared up. We stopped and picked up a map from a nearby kiosk. Isaac unfolded it and pointed out the best gardens to check out. It felt like we were traveling through an indoor city. This hotel was the size of an international airport. They ought to consider putting trams inside this place, I said. It's gigantic. We turned a corner and found Hannah and Abigail standing together. Hey, girls, I said. Want to check out the gardens with us? We were just looking for them, Hannah said. I thought I knew this place well enough to find them without a map, but I think we're just walking in circles instead. Isaac handed our map over to Hannah. There you go, he said. Thanks. Hannah smiled. No worries. We made our way to the nearest garden. I gawked at the expansive space. Hotel balconies lined the walls surrounding the gardens. This one was called Cascades, and there were waterfalls all around it. Hannah read info to us from the brochure about how many waterfalls there were. You'll love this. He grabbed my hand and led me down a curved path. His palm was a little sweaty. Was he nervous? The walkway led behind the waterfall. He'd pulled me along so quickly that we'd lost Hannah and Abigail. When we reached the waterfall, Isaac stopped behind the powerful torrent of water. He got this grin on his face that reminded me of a scared little boy, talking to his crush for the first time. Where was the always confident guy I'd watched on the sidelines for all those years? I'd never seen this side of him before. I've wanted to do this since I was, 10. Before I knew what was happening, he wrapped his arms around me and brushed his nose against mine. I froze, staring up into his eyes. He wanted to kiss me, and my heart begged me to let him. His breath tickled my lips, and I took in a rush of air. You are so amazing, Isaac said. My heart soared at his words. I'd worked so hard to build up a wall against them, but feeling his arms around me, the smell of his cologne, seeing him in a tux. All of it was too much to fight against, and my walls were crumbling fast. I want to know you better. I want to know who you are inside. Who's the real Destiny Clark? He was so close to my lips. Millimeters. All it would take was one tiny move toward him. I want that, too, I said. I want you to know me, and I want to know the real Isaac. We never really had the chance to become real friends. You know, the kind who aren't afraid to show off their inner dork? He seemed surprised by my words, like he'd been expecting me to reject him. I know, he said, relief flooding his features. That's exactly how I feel. So much of our relationship was this big political mess or the stress of rehearsals. I want to sit down and figure you out, to know what makes you tick. I couldn't fight against the pull anymore. I stood on my tiptoes and bridged the tiny gap between our lips. It felt like magic. His lips were soft and firm at all the right moments. I ran my fingers through his soft hair and my hands down the sides of his tux. I'd missed this more than I was willing to admit. I didn't want the kiss to end. It sent a current straight from our lips to my heart, twisting and flipping inside my chest. This guy meant more to me than I could put into words. Isaac pulled me closer than I'd thought possible, crushing our torsos together and bringing a gasp from my lips. You're really good at this, he breathed. I didn't want to let go of him. I couldn't get enough of his closeness, the smell of his skin. If someone had told me last year I'd be kissing the most popular guy in school behind a waterfall while he wore a tux, I would have told them that was impossible. The whole thing was like a dream. He kissed me again, and a chill raced down my spine. But even my dreams weren't this good. "Can you do something for me?" he murmured against my mouth. "Anything," I breathed between kisses. "Let me buy you a nice dinner." Isaac's phone buzzed in his pocket, snapping me back to reality. I pulled away from him, looking away. What was I thinking? I'd just destroyed everything I'd been working toward. He pulled his phone out and tapped the screen. "Hannah's looking for us. She wants us to meet her by the big waterfall." When we arrived at the meeting place, Hannah didn't look happy, and she was alone. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Where's Abigail?" "Some soprano girls wanted her to meet up with them for dinner." "I don't feel good," she said. "Do you need to get food?" Isaac asked. "Maybe that's it," she said. "Destiny and I were just making dinner plans." He gave me a sideways glance, and my face lit on fire. My blush must have been creeping all the way down my neck as I thought about what we'd been doing. "Do you feel nauseous?" I asked, eager to change the subject. "No, I haven't even felt a little nauseous today. I've felt great all day except for stupid Evan and Layla." "Did the nap help?" I asked. "Not really. I woke up depressed." I frowned. "Poor Hannah." "I'm sorry all this is happening to you," Isaac said, hugging her. "Let's go get you fed." I bit my lip. How was I supposed to afford whatever nice dinner Isaac had planned? I'd already spent too much on lunch. I hadn't exactly agreed to let Isaac pay for dinner, but I had a fleeting memory of telling him he could have anything he wanted. It was like my brain took a vacation whenever he kissed me like that. I shivered as I remembered the intoxicating way his lips felt on mine. "It sucks so much." Hannah's voice broke, bringing me back to reality. "I feel so abandoned." "Why'd he have to pick her?" "She's rooming with me." "What are we supposed to say to each other?" "At least it's only one night," Isaac said. "You can just ignore her most of the time." "I guess," Hannah said, muttering under her breath, "I just wish Mr. Bird had put her in another room." Isaac picked out a restaurant he'd been to a lot with his family over the years. "They have really good pasta here," he said. "Shrimp scampi?" I asked. "It's my favorite." I wanted to take the words back after I'd said them. Shrimp scampi was probably one of the pricier items on the menu, and in my stupor, I'd agreed to let Isaac buy me dinner. But my mouth was watering at the thought of biting into a succulent shrimp, and he'd insist on getting it for me now that I'd announced that it was my favorite. He grinned at me. "They have a fantastic shrimp scampi. I like to get their steak gorgonzola pasta." "That sounds fancy," I said. "It sounds disgusting," Hannah said. "Have you ever had gorgonzola?" "It's basically just blue cheese, which is nothing more than just rotting cheese." "It depends on the quality of the gorgonzola," Isaac explained. "And these guys have quality everything. And probably expensive everything." I wanted to tell Isaac I would rather find someplace cheaper to eat, but I'd made a promise to him and I had to keep it. We got a table for 3 at the restaurant, and Isaac scooted close to me in the booth. He ordered his steak gorgonzola, and Hannah decided on a classic spaghetti and meatball recipe. I bit my lip and ordered the shrimp scampi, wincing at the price. I handed the menu to the server and caught Isaac watching me with a satisfied smile. "What?" "Nothing." "Yeah, right." He was just glad he'd won. But boy, if I had to suffer through feeling guilty about leading him on, this was the way to do it. Getting kissed under a waterfall and then being tricked into eating my favorite dinner at a nice restaurant. We pigged out on the garlic bread our server kept bringing to our table. "We'd better stop eating this or we're not going to have any room for our entrees," I said. "It's just so good," Hannah said. "I can't stop eating it." The server showed up with our plates, and Isaac cut off a piece of steak topped with cheese and wine sauce. He popped the bite into his mouth and closed his eyes. "This is just as good as I remembered it," he said. "Want to try some?" he asked. "Sure," I said. I was a little nervous about the cheese, but Isaac had made it look so delicious that I couldn't resist at least trying. He fed me the steak and cheese with his fork, which did funny things to my insides. What was going on with us after that kiss? Did he think we were back together, or would he accept that I'd just had a weak moment? I chewed the meat thoughtfully. It was different from anything I'd ever had. There was a mature flavor to it that intrigued me and made me want to experiment with eating fancier foods. I opened my eyes and smiled. "I like it," I said. "Y'all are nuts," Hannah said, cutting a big meatball into smaller pieces. "I'll stick to normal food, thank you very much. Do you want to try some of my shrimp scampi?" I asked Isaac. "Sure," he said, his face lighting up. I hadn't realized he loved food so much. He didn't just gobble it down like Preston or Michael. Isaac savored his food, appreciated it. We finished our meal, and Isaac paid for my food. I didn't even cringe. "We still have a bit more time before the awards ceremony," he said, grinning at me. We explored the other gardens, and Isaac took us through some of the shops. He bought me a little angel ceramic figure that I'd fallen in love with. "I know this is totally cheesy," he said. "But this is how I view you," he said. "You're right. It's cheesy," Hannah said. "Hold on," he said. "Hear me out." "I'm listening," I said. "I feel like you came into my life when everything was falling apart. You brought so much light into my life. I feel uplifted when I'm around you. There's this calm that emanates from you, Destiny. I don't think you even realize you have it, but it's contagious. Having you around helps me feel so much peace in my life." I almost laughed. "It feels like I've only brought you trouble." "That's because we're surrounded by idiots," Hannah said. "Haven't you noticed?" "Hannah, you're definitely fierier as a pregnant person," I said. "What do you mean?" she asked. "Your words carry more bite than they used to have." She shrugged. "I guess. It makes me sad," I said. "Why?" Hannah asked. "Because so much of it's because of your situation. It doesn't seem fair that you have to go through all this." "I agree," Isaac said, his expression somber. Isaac checked his phone. "We'd better head over to the competition," he said. We made our way back to the conference room and found seats near the rest of our choir members. The competition organizers opened the ceremony with a simple introduction, and then the speaker droned on, thanking all the groups who'd helped organize the event. Isaac traced patterns on the palm of my hand, and it felt so good that I didn't pull away. They announced the third and second place winners and then took me by surprise when they called out Primus from Bethel Baptist Academy as the first place winners. Mr. Bird went on stage and accepted the trophy they presented to him. When he held it up, we all went wild, cheering. We sat back down, and I saw a stricken look on Hannah's face. "Are you okay?" I asked. "Yeah. I'm fine. I just have a tummy ache from that spaghetti." I offered her the pack of spearmint gum I had in my purse. "Sometimes gum helps my tummy," I said. "Thanks," Hannah said, pulling out a piece. The ceremony ended, and we gathered on the grand staircase to get a group photo of us in our black dresses and tuxedos. On the bus, as we drove back to our hotel, Mr. Bird held a devotional and shared a message about kindness and acceptance, especially when it was the hardest for us. He talked about how sometimes we choose to cling so tightly to the rules that we tend to forget the big picture, like the Pharisees did to Jesus. But Jesus loved everyone, regardless of whether they obeyed the rules of their society or not. When the devotional ended, Isaac leaned over to us. "We have a couple of hours until lights out. You guys want to go to the pool?" "Sure," I said. A small moan escaped Hannah's lips. "Tummy still hurting?" I asked in a quiet voice. "Yeah. It feels awful. I just want to go to my room and fall asleep." I felt bad for her. Isaac and I helped her up, but she shooed us away. I don't need help. I can still move around like a regular person. We went up to the room she and I were sharing. Abigail and Layla were in the room next door where they were starting up a big round of card games. Are you sure you're okay? I asked Hannah. Yeah. I'm just tired. You go have fun with Isaac. My eyes lingered on her exhausted form, curled up in bed, and my heart filled with worry. I changed into my swimsuit in the bathroom. When I came out in my royal blue one-piece, Hannah was still in bed in a fetal position. I'm headed out, I said, pulling on my cover-up. Mr. Bird was a lot laxer about the swimming dress code than they'd been on the retreat. Hannah responded. I opened the door to our room, and Isaac was standing there. Oh, hey, he said. I was just about to knock. Good timing, I said. Is Hannah okay? I shook my head. She looks like she's in pain. Shouldn't we be doing something? I don't think there's anything we can do. She probably just has a tummy ache. So it's just the two of us going to the pool? It looks that way. As we rode down the elevator, we talked easily, and for a few moments, it felt like we'd gone back to normal. Like we were dating again. Was that what I wanted? What about Preston? I'd kissed him, and clearly, I still had feelings for him. I wasn't doing a very good job of staying away from dating either of them. Correction, I wasn't doing a very good job of not dating Isaac. It didn't help that he was all over me. He was making it impossible to stay away from him, and I was too weak to keep resisting him. We got to the pool and found it slightly crowded. Aspen sat on the edge of the round hot tub in an electric pink bikini. Her hair was down and flowing, and she was laughing a little too hard at Will, who was talking animatedly from inside the hot tub. Isaac didn't even look at them. He dropped his towel on a chair and pulled his shirt off. Holy washboard abs. I stared openly. Isaac was a stunning work of art, and I was left speechless. How had I never seen him with his shirt off before? As flattering as it is, you don't have to leave your mouth hanging open like that, Isaac said in a low voice. I promptly snapped my jaw shut. An intense desire to run my hands over his chiseled abs and defined chest overwhelmed me. I knew he had nice arms and a strong chest, but I'd never reached up his shirt. I'd always worked so hard to keep myself in check with Isaac. I'd done more with Preston than Isaac. After our hammock spot kiss, I'd been uber aware of how carried away I could get with him. Had I been missing out all this time? Stop, Destiny. I had to take hold of myself. Everything okay over there? Isaac chuckled. I'm fine, I squeaked, without taking my eyes off his shirtless form. Why would anything be wrong? He laughed and said, Are you going to swim, or are you going to stand there and stare at me for the next 2 hours? You're welcome to, but it might get awkward after a while. I pulled off my cover-up and tossed it onto the chair next to Isaac's. I turned to see his eyes taking in my swimsuit-clad figure appreciatively, and I realized he hadn't ever seen me in a swimsuit. Suddenly, I felt nervous. I tiptoed over to the edge and dipped a foot into the water. Isaac lowered himself into the pool, the muscles in his shoulders flexing. I bit my bottom lip and looked away. It's a good thing we aren't alone down here. Otherwise, I don't think I'd be able to keep my hands off you, he murmured to me. My heart raced. I sat on the edge of the pool, dipping my legs into the water. I'm not doing a very good job staying away from you, I said. Then don't. He grabbed me, and I squealed as he pulled me into the water. I landed against his very bare, very muscled chest. He wrapped his arms around me and touched his nose to mine. Isaac. MMHM? We have an audience. I wasn't looking, but I knew Aspen had to be watching us. Who cares about them, he said with a smile. But he pulled away. I let out a pent-up breath. The last thing I needed was Aspen tattling to Mr. Bird about us getting too cuddly in the pool. I pushed away from Isaac, and he swam after me. I splashed him, and he splashed back. I moved over to where I could touch bottom and leaned against the side of the pool. Isaac settled in next to me. What was I going to do about my confused heart? Was Isaac only going after me because I'd rejected him, or was he truly afraid to lose me forever? I turned to him, the thoughts swirling through my mind. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. I considered telling him something random, but then I turned to him and asked, "Why are you doing this?" "Because swimming is fun. You know what I mean." His expression sobered. He opened his mouth to speak, but then shut it. Finally, he said, "Because I care about you, and I'm pretty sure you care about me, too. But my heart isn't free right now. I know everything feels magical and fun now, but what happens when we're back to grueling rehearsals and you're picking up extra hours at work or studying all night? Don't worry about it. We'll work it out." I frowned. What did he mean by work it out? It sounded like he was dismissing my concerns. I bit my lip and looked away from him. I wasn't in the mood to talk about it right now and made a mental note to ask him about it later. Chapter 10, Destiny. Startled, I sat up in bed suddenly. A strange sound came from the bathroom. Hannah was gone. The bathroom light shone from under the door. Slipping out of bed, I padded over to the bathroom and knocked softly. The strange moaning came from inside again. I knocked again but didn't get a response. Panic clenched my chest. I tried the door, and thankfully, it was unlocked. Hannah was curled up on the bathroom floor, soft moans escaping from her mouth. I gasped and shut the door behind me so the other girls wouldn't wake. "Hannah," I said in a cautious voice. "What's going on?" She propped herself up to a sitting position and looked at me through hazy eyes. "I feel awful." "Is it just nausea?" I asked. "No. My stomach hurts." "Still? Do you think it was the meatballs?" "No," she said, her eyes wide with fear as she woke more. "There's blood." Fear clenched a fist around my heart and tightened its grip. "The baby." That was when I saw the dark pool of blood growing from beneath her. "We need to get you some help." "No. Don't tell Mr. Bird." "Hannah, you could be in serious trouble." "I have to do something." "Don't tell." She leaned her head against the bathroom wall and closed her eyes. "What about Isaac?" I asked. "Yeah," she slurred. "Get Isaac." I slipped back into the room where the sleeping girls lay and unplugged my phone from where it sat charging on the bedside table. I grabbed a room key and stepped out into the hall as I texted him. "Are you still awake? We're having an emergency." I paced the hall, contemplating whether I should call him. It was why I'd stepped out into the hall in the first place. I bit my lip. If his phone went off, it would wake the entire room, and Josh and Evan were in there. Hannah wouldn't want either of them to know what was happening. I walked over to the window by the elevator and looked out into the city lights. A drink machine next to me hummed busily. I checked my phone again. Nothing. I was going to either have to call Isaac or knock on his door, but I didn't even know what room he was in. I could find Mrs. Smith, the chaperone for the girls on the trip, but I knew Hannah wouldn't want that. Hannah's baby could be dying. I had to do something. I flipped open my phone and called Isaac. It rang 3 times before he answered. "Hey," he said in a whispered voice. "I need to talk to you," I said. "Hang on," he said. I heard him rummaging around. After half a minute passed, I heard the click of a door opening and closing. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Are you someplace where you can talk privately?" I asked. "Yeah, I'm in the hall." "No one's here." Hannah's bleeding and half-conscious on the bathroom floor. "I think something bad is going on with her baby." "Are you serious?" "We need to get her to a hospital, but she doesn't want anyone to know what's going on." "I can call an Uber," he said. "We'll get her there." I heard a ding of an elevator over the phone. "I'm coming upstairs," he said. "Okay." The elevator doors opened, and Isaac stepped out as I ended the call. His face was grim. "You'd better go check on her and grab her purse and her phone." "Got it." "Hannah would need clean clothes and some towels as well." "I'm going to just hang out here," he said. I unlocked my door and slipped inside, shutting the door behind me with the softest of clicks. I grabbed Hannah's purse and backpack and brought them into the bathroom with me. "Hey," I said in a quiet but cheery voice. "How are you feeling?" "It hurts," she groaned, clutching her midsection. "Like really bad cramps." "Let's get you cleaned up," I said. "Can you take a shower?" "I don't know," she said. "I feel so dizzy." "Okay. No shower. But we can at least get you into clean clothes." "Can you do that yourself, or do you need my help?" I asked. "I can do it." I unzipped her bag and dug out clean underwear and some sweatpants that said Bethel down one leg. The shirt she wore looked clean enough to keep. I searched to see if she had any pads in her outer zipper pouch, but couldn't find anything. "I'm going to find a pad for you," I said. I didn't remember packing one for myself, but I usually kept one in my purse for emergencies. I went back into the room, grabbing my purse. Back in the bathroom, I checked it but came up empty. I heard a voice from the bedroom. "What's going on?" I opened the door to see Layla sitting up, shielding her eyes from the light of the bathroom. "Hannah started her period and needs a pad." "You don't have any extra, do you?" I asked, surprising myself with how easily the lie rolled off my lips. And then I realized, with a jolt of sadness, that I might not have spoken a lie at all. "Yeah, I have some," Layla said, getting out of bed. She crouched by her overnight bag and dug around inside until she pulled out a couple of pads. "Thanks," I said. I slipped back into the bathroom, shutting the door behind me. Hannah was still on the floor and had dozed off again. "Hannah," I said. "We need to get you cleaned up." My phone lit up with a text from Isaac. "The Uber is here. You guys coming soon?" "Hannah, we need to hurry." The pool around her had grown in diameter. She was losing blood too fast. I lifted her under her shoulders and helped her sit on the toilet. She was barely responsive as I helped her change into clean clothes. "Hannah," I said. "Can you hear me?" She said. "We need to get you out of here. Isaac is waiting just outside the room. He can help you." "Can you make it to the door?" "Yeah. I can do it," she said with weak determination in her voice. She stood taller and stumbled from the bathroom to the hotel door. I glanced over my shoulder to see Layla asleep again, with a pillow over her head to muffle the noise we were making. I breathed a sigh of relief. If she'd understood what was going on, she'd be completely awake. Hannah stumbled into Isaac's arms as soon as we left the room. "It's a miracle that we made it out here without your help," I said. "Let me grab the other stuff." "Can you get her down to the Uber, and I'll follow in a couple of minutes?" "With the state she's in, I'll probably catch up with you before you're even out of the hotel." "Sure," Isaac said, supporting Hannah with an arm around her shoulders. They hobbled to the elevator as I turned to unlock the door again. I hurried into the bathroom and grabbed an armful of towels. I used toilet paper to clean the blood from the floor and threw the mess into the toilet. It took a lot more than I'd expected to clean it all. I didn't want the girls to wake up and freak out when they saw blood all over the bathroom and Hannah missing. "What are you doing?" Abigail said at the door. I started at the sound of her voice. "You can't tell anyone. Promise?" She narrowed her eyes as she took in the blood remaining on the floor. "Hannah's sick. But she doesn't want anyone to know. We're taking her to the hospital." Abigail's eyes grew solemn. "Is she okay?" "I don't know. But I have to hurry. Please don't tell anyone. I will text you if there's a problem and we can't get back in time to make it home." "Okay. Gotta go." I flushed the last of the toilet paper and put on Hannah's backpack, grabbing her purse. I threw 2 towels over my shoulder and walked past Abigail, who was still standing there in shock. I grabbed my purse and patted the pocket of my pajama bottoms to make sure my room key was still in there. The door shut behind me as I rushed to the elevator. Quickly, I texted Isaac to let him know I was on my way.
Chapter 11, Isaac. I helped Hannah into the waiting Uber as my phone buzzed in my pocket. I checked my phone to see that Destiny had texted to let me know she was on her way. I looked up and caught a figure standing on a 4th-floor balcony. The lights shone off her hair enough to illuminate a halo of light blonde, but she was too far away to see who it was. I stepped into the Uber and shut the door. The figure turned from the balcony and went back into her room. Moments later, Destiny stepped from the hotel lobby, laden down with bags and towels. I jumped from the car to help her. We put all the bags in the front seat, and then Destiny slid into the middle of the back seat and tucked a towel under Hannah. I gave directions to the driver, who seemed relieved to finally be leaving the hotel. I hadn't told him much about what was going on other than that we needed to go to the nearest emergency room. He seemed to understand that we didn't want much attention drawn to ourselves, so he didn't ask any questions and didn't speak much. He dropped us off right at the entrance to the ER. Destiny grabbed all the bags from the front seat, while I paid the driver and then helped Hannah out. She leaned heavily on me, and we stumbled into the hospital. Fear clutched at my heart. I hated seeing Hannah like this. I'd never seen her sick other than her pregnancy. Hannah had been so strong, so healthy. Seeing her like this was killing me. With determination, I helped her into the ER. She collapsed into a chair while I checked her in. Destiny stayed by her side. A nurse provided Hannah with a wheelchair, and we rolled her over to the elevator. We checked in upstairs at labor and delivery, and they found Hannah a room. Destiny and I stepped out into the hall while a nurse helped Hannah into a hospital gown. "I'm scared," Destiny said, keeping her voice low. "Do you think Hannah is going to lose her baby?" "I don't know," I said, my voice grim. "But it doesn't look good." "There was so much blood," Destiny said, crossing her arms around her like she was trying to protect herself from the terrible memory. "Hannah wanted to keep her baby," she said. "Did you know?" I shook my head. "It's why she wanted to stay with Evan. He'd talked her into keeping the baby. Before they broke up, he told her he wanted to get a place together. Do you think we should have told him she was going into the hospital? It's his baby." "Maybe," I said. "But I think it would have been much more stressful on Hannah if he was around." Destiny scoffed. "No kidding. Still, someone's going to have to tell him." "Only if Hannah's okay with that," Destiny said. "Eventually he's going to notice she's not pregnant anymore," I said, regretting it immediately. "I mean, if that's what's happening." Destiny's face went white. "Hannah will be so devastated." "I just want Hannah to be safe," I murmured. "Me, too." Destiny brought her knees up to her chin like a scared little girl. I put an arm around her shoulders, and she leaned against me, burying her face into my chest. I rubbed her back and felt the tension leaving her as she melted into me. An hour later, the doctor came into the waiting room and waved us over. We exchanged a glance and walked over to him. "You can go see her now." "Is she okay?" I asked. "Your friend had a miscarriage. She lost a bit of blood, but nothing too serious. She should be able to go home in a couple of hours." "Are you going to call her parents?" I asked. "We aren't obligated to tell them since the pregnancy terminated naturally. So she could go on living, and they might not ever find out. She could keep going to Bethel. She could live a normal life. She had no more connection to Evan. She's going to need a lot of support as she goes through this." I encouraged her to tell her parents, but if she chooses to keep it confidential, she's going to need help from the two of you. I recommend that you help her find a good therapist. She could experience significant grieving or even depression. I nodded. Hannah needed us, and I was glad to be there. I thought back to the day that I'd caught Destiny buying a pregnancy test and had found out that it was for Hannah. I probably wouldn't have ever found out about her pregnancy if it wasn't for bumping into Destiny that night. Hannah was so furious that I'd found out. But now I was so glad, because she was hurting, and she wasn't going to get any sympathy from Evan. He was too busy living his life of freedom, enjoying Layla. And Hannah was left in the darkness to mourn. But I could be there for her, just like she'd always let me tell her my problems. I grabbed Destiny's hand with resolve, and we walked to Hannah's room together. Hannah looked so small and alone in the hospital bed. She was hugging her arms across her belly, and her eyes were red and puffy like she'd been crying. "Hey." I hesitated at the door. She looked so fragile, like I'd break her if I touched her. "How are you feeling?" Hannah turned her head to the side, her eyes dead. I took a seat in the chair next to her. "I'm sorry." I took her hand and covered it with both of my own. There was so much pain in her eyes. She was a girl. She was so tiny. I just started to feel little kicks. "Did you get to see her?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "For just a minute. They asked me if I wanted to hold her, but it was too hard." A big tear slipped down her cheek. "She was never mine to keep," Hannah said. "Am I a terrible person?" "No," I said, my voice soft, but full of conviction. "You did everything you could. I know you loved her." A sob escaped from deep within Hannah, and it shot right through me. I did. I loved her. She held her hands across her now empty belly. "I miss her." Fat tears rolled down her cheeks. I wanted to keep her forever. Listen to her cry and then laugh. I wanted to wrap soft blankets around her and rock her to sleep. Her body shook with her grief. Destiny handed Hannah the tissue box, and I saw tears streaming down her face as well. "I'm so sorry, Hannah." Destiny put a comforting arm around her shoulders. She was so tiny, but she could have grown up into such a beautiful woman. Now, she will never get that chance. Destiny rubbed Hannah's shoulder, while I squeezed my hands around hers. It wasn't fair. Why did she have to go through so much pain? She was just an innocent girl who had gotten carried away in one thoughtless moment. Why did other people get away with so many horrible things and never face consequences?
Chapter 12, Destiny. Hannah was released from the hospital at 5. I'd gotten a little bit of sleep in one of the chairs in her room, but my bones ached from exhaustion from sitting in a strange position for too long. Isaac had been a rock-solid comfort to both Hannah and to me throughout the night, but I could tell he was hurting, too. Hannah was tired, but she seemed to be doing much better, thanks to the painkillers they gave her. The nurse warned us that Hannah would probably get emotional and depressed as her hormone levels dropped from the elevated levels of pregnancy back to normal. I didn't want to leave her side. I silently promised myself to be with her as much as possible in the days ahead. Isaac called another Uber, and I was grateful for him because I would never have been able to pay for the ride to the hospital. We climbed into our Uber, and Isaac sat in the middle this time. Hannah and I both leaned against him. I closed my eyes, sleepiness overcoming me. But I forced myself to stay awake long enough to say, "Thanks for being our hero tonight, Isaac. I don't know what I would have done without you." Hannah mumbled her agreement and snuggled deeper into Isaac, and he wrapped an arm around her in a brotherly, protective way. "Isaac," I mumbled. "Yeah? You're an incredibly decent person." In my head, the words were better formed, but they came out of my mouth slurred and sloppy. Isaac's gentle laughter shook beneath me. "Thanks." Hannah said. "Hero." Isaac's heart pulsed against my cheek as sleep overcame me. The Uber came to a stop before I was ready to get out of the car. But I hauled myself out and stood in the early morning air as Isaac got Hannah's bags from the front seat. We still have a few hours left to sleep, Isaac said, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear, looking at me like I was the most beautiful girl he'd ever seen. Not too bad. A shudder ran down my spine. His simple touch wasn't enough. I needed more of him. After what he'd done to help me get Hannah to the hospital, my feelings for him had deepened in a way I hadn't known was possible. We got on the elevator, and Isaac helped us carry the bags to our room. We stood in front of our door, and he gazed down at me. "Thanks for calling me. I'm glad I could be there for Hannah." He bent his head down and grazed his lips over mine for only half a second before pulling away, leaving me wanting more. But I needed to get Hannah into the room. And if we were caught kissing in the hall outside my door at 5 in the morning, it wouldn't look so good, even if Hannah was with us. "Good night," I said. "See you in a few hours for breakfast," he said. My eyes trailed after him as he walked away toward the elevator. The hours passed much too quickly. From what I could tell, Layla hadn't noticed that we'd left at all. I woke to the sound of her in the shower, and I was glad I'd thought to clean the bathroom last night. If she'd found that mess in there, she would have been either really grossed out or really freaked out. Probably both. What if I hadn't woken? Would Hannah have been okay? Would she have miscarried her baby right there in the bathroom? I shuddered to think about how horrible that would have been for her. She could have bled to death. And I couldn't have saved her and kept it discreet without Isaac. Layla left for breakfast before I had the strength to even lift my head from my pillow. I checked the time and saw that it was 8. We had to meet at the bus by 9. I twisted my hair into a bun and jumped into the shower for a quick cleanup. After throwing on a pair of jeans and a t-shirt, I grabbed the room key to head down to breakfast. Abigail was already gone. Hannah was still asleep. I didn't want to bother her, so I decided to bring her up a plate. I spotted Isaac reserving a table with 2 empty seats. "How is she?" he asked from over a plate of waffles covered in butter and syrup. "Sleeping," I said. "Good. I'm going to go get some food before it's all gone." Isaac stood. "We should make a plate for Hannah, or she's not going to get any breakfast." My thoughts exactly. He left his waffles to get cold so he could gather breakfast for Hannah. Between the two of us, we were able to pick out all the foods we knew Hannah would like. "Too bad they don't have Pop-Tarts," I said. "We'll have to buy her a bunch when we get back and surprise her with her own personal stash for her room in case she gets too sad to go down to the kitchen," Isaac suggested. My heart melted in my chest. That was so incredibly thoughtful of him to think in advance of Hannah's suffering. She had some rough days ahead of her, and I didn't know how I could help her. Mr. and Mrs. Miller didn't even want me to come over to the house anymore. But Isaac could be there for her in ways that I couldn't. He worked over there all the time, so he was the only one who could help her in her own home. Her parents wouldn't know what was wrong with their daughter. Maybe we could tell them that she was just sad over her breakup with Evan. It would be a good way to convince them to help her get therapy, though I had no idea if Hannah would even want to go to therapy. Isaac and I sat down with our food. I put an empty plate upside down over Hannah's food to keep it warm while we ate. I sought into my waffle, but felt Isaac's eyes on me. "I love you," he said. Caught off guard, my knife stilled in the middle of cutting my waffle. I slowly raised my eyes to his. I wanted to tell him I loved him, too. To bask forever in the warm glow radiating through my body. My love for him had doubled after all he'd done for us during the night. Watching him take care of Hannah had given me so much respect for him. But I wasn't free to tell him. Not when I didn't know what would happen to us after the trip when life went back to normal. And what about when he went to college? There would be so many older girls swarming a hot guy like him. How would I ever be able to compete with that? I had to protect my heart. I couldn't say the words back to him, so instead, I reached across the table and took his hand. "Thank you for everything you did last night. You were an incredible friend to both of us." He flinched at my use of the word friend and pulled his hand away, hurt crossing his features. But I didn't want Isaac to be hurt. "It means a lot to me that you like my church. I don't think I've told you that. I'm honestly blown away that you've tried so hard to learn so much about it. It makes me feel so loved. You are loved, he said. Your church is a big part of who you are, and I can't really get to know you unless I understand your church. He shrugged. Plus, I like it. It feels nice to be there. The doctrine is fascinating. I bit my lip, afraid to ask the next question. Do you think it's true? I don't know, he answered without hesitation. I nodded in understanding. So he was going to all these church meetings, because he wanted to understand me more. Not because he was thinking about joining. Do you think you would ever join? I asked. This time he hesitated. He studied my face. I'm thinking about it, actually. I've been giving the missionary lessons a lot of thought. They've asked me to pray about getting baptized. What? I gasped and leaped toward him, crushing him with a hug. That's awesome news. When I pulled back, his face was glowing. The crowd at the dining area of the hotel began to thin out. I checked my phone and saw we had to meet in 20 minutes to load up on the bus. I tucked my phone into my back pocket. I'd better get this food back to Hannah. I still need to finish packing up. Isaac stood, shoving his hands into his pockets. After his announcement of seriously considering baptism, I felt bolder and less like I needed to protect myself. I pulled my lips up into a flirty smile and checked him out with appreciation. You know, that pose makes you look like a model on an Abercrombie poster. I thought those guys were all shirtless. The edges of Isaac's mouth twitched like he was trying to keep a straight face. If you wanted to go shirtless, you know, to enhance the image, I wouldn't complain. Isaac grinned. Go take Hannah her food, silly girl. He waved me away. I grabbed Hannah's plate, keeping the other plate on top of it, and laughed as I headed to the elevator. Just as I pushed the up arrow, Isaac appeared by my side. I just realized we're going in the same direction, so I might as well share the elevator ride with you. He took my hand. I curled my fingers around his. Ah, isn't that just adorable? The familiar voice dripped with acid. I looked over my shoulder to see Aspen standing behind us. What's your problem, Aspen? Isaac asked in a tired voice, not bothering to look back at her. I don't have a problem. Her smile unnerved me for a reason I couldn't explain. We stepped onto the elevator with Aspen at our heels. What would have been a few moments in privacy with Isaac had turned into an awkward, icy silence with the last person either of us wanted to see. At the third floor, Isaac leaned over to whisper in my ear, "This is me. See you soon, beautiful." The doors closed behind him, leaving me alone with Aspen. I gripped the plates together like a clamshell until my fingers made indents in the plates. I'm going to give you a piece of advice. Girl to girl. You shouldn't trust him, Aspen said. He'll say anything to please you. It's what he does. I pressed my lips together to keep from lashing out at her. Why bother? Aspen was just looking to stir up a fight. The elevator opened with a ding, and I walked past Aspen like she hadn't spoken. When I reached my room, I knocked to keep from having to pull out my key card while juggling Hannah's breakfast. Abigail opened the door, her long auburn hair braided down her back. Is Hannah awake? I asked. I'm up, Hannah called in a groggy voice. I brought you breakfast, I said, coming into the room. Where's Layla? She's already packed up and downstairs, Abigail said. You rock. Hannah took the plate from me. I pulled a pack of silverware from my back pocket and handed it to her. Does Layla know that Hannah was sick last night? Abigail asked. She just knows Hannah started her period unexpectedly. I don't want to pry, but are you okay, Hannah? Abigail said. I'm just worried. I didn't think you'd be back by now. I'll be fine, Hannah said in a dead voice. Abigail frowned, her eyes crinkling in concern. I understood that Abigail probably had lots of questions, but the fewer people who knew the truth, the better. Rumors spread like wildfire. And although Abigail didn't seem the gossiping type, neither of us knew her well enough to reveal a secret that big. If it ever got out that Hannah was pregnant, she'd be kicked out of Bethel. I packed up my toiletries in the bathroom while Hannah ate breakfast. "Did you get me a drink?" Hannah called out. "Sorry, I forgot," I said. "I have an extra water bottle." Abigail pulled it from the side pouch of her backpack. "You're awesome," Hannah said. "I'm dying of thirst." "Do you need any help carrying your stuff down?" Abigail asked. "That would be so nice of you," I said. Hannah was probably still too weak to carry her bags down to the bus. "We can probably split it up between the two of us." "Hannah, we have about 10 more minutes if you want to jump in the shower or anything." Hannah nodded and climbed from bed. "I'm all about the shower idea right now." She dug a set of clean clothes from her overnight bag and locked herself into the bathroom. "Do you want to start getting our stuff downstairs while she's showering?" I said. "That way our hands will be empty when she gets out, and we won't have a problem carrying her stuff too." "Great idea," Abigail said. I zipped up my bag, and Abigail and I headed out the door. When we arrived downstairs, I spotted Isaac sitting at one of the tables with his bags all around him. "Hey," I said with a bright smile. "Would you mind watching our stuff?" "Hannah's upstairs in the shower, and we're going to bring her bags down." "No problem." "How's she doing?" "She seems much better this morning." I was surprised by how well she was coping. I had expected her to feel much worse. When Abigail and I reached the room, I searched for any of Hannah's belongings that might have been missed. While I was gathering some of the clothes she'd worn yesterday, I heard deep, uncontrollable sobbing coming from the bathroom. Abigail looked at me with wide eyes and then stared at the door, her brows knit together. "What should we do?" I shook my head. "I don't think there's anything we can do. Just be kind to her. She needs friends right now." "I can do that," Abigail said, her voice full of resolve. "I don't know what's going on, but I'm not sure it matters. Sometimes you just need to know someone cares." I wondered for a moment if Abigail thought Hannah had tried to kill herself, what with all the blood and her being heartbroken over Evan. It would make more sense than a miscarriage. But Abigail was right, and I stopped thinking about what she thought. It didn't matter why Hannah was crying. It mattered that she was hurting and needed love and support. The shower stopped, and Hannah's sobbing quieted. She came out of the bathroom with a wet, messy bun and her face clear of makeup. What was the point when she'd cry it off anyway? "How much time do we have?" she asked. "We're already late," I said. "Okay." Hannah gathered her supplies from the bathroom and tossed them into her bag. She looked around the room. "Did y'all pack everything else already?" "Yeah. We got it," I said. "You guys are lifesavers." "For reals." She tossed her purse over her shoulder. She bent over to zip up her bag and clutched at her belly in pain. My eyebrows knit together. "Are you okay?" "Ow, just cramps." I zipped her bag for her. "Have you taken any painkillers this morning?" "Not yet," she said. Abigail grabbed Hannah's Kate Spade bag. "Get some medicine, and we'll deal with your luggage." Hannah pulled a bottle of Advil from her purse and took it with the water Abigail gave her. I took Hannah's choir dress and purse. "Ready to go?" "Yeah, let's go," Hannah said. Once we were loaded up on the bus, I allowed myself to relax. Hannah was stable and sitting behind us with Abigail. I snuggled up against Isaac, and he wrapped his arm around me as I drifted off to sleep. But my sleep was anything but blissful. Instead, it was full of dreams where Aspen kept taunting me, holding some unknown knowledge about Isaac over my head. I startled awake and saw her staring at me with a warning in her eyes, like she was suddenly my newest friend, overly eager to protect me. I suppressed a shudder and buried my face into Isaac's shoulder.
Chapter 13, Isaac. I walked through the front door and looked up the staircase with intense longing. My bed called to me something fierce. I'd had trouble sleeping after the hospital because my muscles were wound so tightly. It was awesome to have Destiny snuggled up to me on the bus, but I hadn't gotten a wink of sleep. I dropped my stuff at the foot of the stairs and trudged up, stopping halfway with a sigh. If Mom saw my bags piled by the stairs, she'd wake me up and make me put it all away. I went back down and grabbed them. Exhaustion slammed me like a cinderblock wall as I climbed back up the stairs with my luggage. The bags slid from my grasp to the floor next to my closet. My sluggish arms stripped my jeans and shirt down to my boxers. I collapsed onto my bed and fell into a blissful sleep. A knock sounded on my door, waking me from my oblivion. "Who is it?" My throat felt dry and scratchy. "It's your dad," his voice boomed. He didn't sound happy. "I'm sleeping," I called out. "Not anymore, you aren't," he said, pushing the door open. "Why are you sleeping at 6 in the evening on a Saturday?" he asked with an accusatory edge to his voice. "Because I'm tired." "Oh, right. So this has nothing to do with the fact that you were out all night with Destiny?" My mouth fell open. How did he know about that? And what made him think that it was only Destiny? It seemed that he didn't know anything about Hannah, which eased some of the panic in my chest. "Don't bother denying it," he said. "The look on your face is all the proof I need." "Why do you think I was out last night?" I asked cautiously. "I got a call from Aspen this afternoon, warning me that she saw you getting into a car with Destiny at 2 in the morning. The person on the balcony. It must have been Aspen. Had she seen Hannah from the back and assumed it was Destiny? They looked so much alike that it would be easy to mistake them for each other from the back. Destiny hadn't even gotten out of the building until Aspen had gone back inside. She'd probably seen me staring at her. Aspen doesn't know what she's talking about." "Okay, then enlighten me. What happened last night?" I opened my mouth, but no answer came to me, no quick lie to roll off my tongue. Anything I could say would either get Destiny in trouble for sneaking out or would raise questions about Hannah's trip to the hospital. If her parents knew she'd been to the emergency room in the middle of the night, they'd pump her for information and eventually take her to a doctor to verify whatever story she created. I clamped my mouth shut. My best defense in this case was silence. Or distraction. The Mormon missionaries have challenged me to get baptized. Dad's eyes bulged like I'd just told him I was about to become a father. And I'm seriously thinking about joining. Get some clothes on, son. We need to have a serious talk downstairs. Your mom fixed supper. Grab a plate and meet me in my office. He shut the door behind him. Well, that got his attention. I smiled to myself as I tugged on a pair of jeans and pulled out an athletic shirt from my drawer. I opened my door and was hit by the smell of my mom's spaghetti, causing my stomach to growl like an angry beast. Breakfast had been a long time ago. Mom was putting dishes in the dishwasher when I walked into the kitchen. "Hey Mom." "Isaac. How was your trip?" "Exhausting and stressful." "It was great. We won the competition." "I wish I could have seen it," she said. "You will soon. Opening night is in 2 weeks." I piled pasta onto a plate and covered it with sauce and Parmesan. Although I kept my voice light, a growing dread snaked through me. "Well, Dad wanted to talk to me about the trip, so I'm going to eat in his office." "Okay," she said over her shoulder, wiping down the counter. Dad's office was just off the family room, so I had to pass by Josh on my way there. He was sitting in front of the TV, playing a video game. "I heard you got busted," he said. "How did you sneak out like that without any of us noticing?" There was amazed admiration in his voice, like he wanted me to give him pointers. I ignored him. Once again, silence was the safest option. I wouldn't put it past Josh to feign interest just to get me to incriminate myself. I'd been his brother for way too many years to fall for that trap again. I pushed open the slightly ajar door to Dad's office. He was behind the desk, typing. He looked up at me with a steady gaze he probably meant to be intimidating, but I didn't shrink away from him, just took a seat in the chair across the desk from him and rested my plate of spaghetti on my side of the desk. I twirled some pasta around my fork and listened to the tick-tick of the clock mounted on the wall behind his desk. "Why are you talking to Mormon missionaries?" Dad kept tight control over his voice. "Because I'm interested in what they have to say. Getting baptized into someone else's church is a life-changing decision." "I'm aware of that," I said, keeping my voice even. "Is this something you've prayed about?" he asked. "Yes, sir. I've prayed about it." "What is God telling you?" "He told me it was my choice." That wasn't exactly true. I hadn't felt anything from God. I decided on my own that it must mean that He wanted me to choose for myself. "So, you're choosing to change your entire belief system for this girl?" "I told you I'm considering it. I haven't chosen anything, yet." Dad sat back in his desk chair, examining my face like he was trying to solve a complicated puzzle. "Okay," he said, turning around to his computer like I wasn't even in the room anymore. That was it. I expected him to talk me out of it or tell me I was headed straight for hell. But his cool dismissal unnerved me the most.
Chapter 14, Destiny. I called Hannah throughout the rest of the weekend to check up on her. I was going nuts, not being able to see her. Isaac promised me he'd visit her, and he'd made good on that promise by checking in on her Saturday night and then again Sunday afternoon. He told me that Hannah had been crying a lot, but that he'd brought her plenty of Pop-Tarts and chocolate, and it had seemed to cheer her up. She didn't show up to school on Monday morning, so Isaac and I went out that night to buy her a big teddy bear. "She just needs something to hold on to when she cries," I said. "It works like magic. You'd be surprised at the power of a teddy bear." Isaac grinned as we walked down the aisle of the toy store to the stuffed animal section. I found a classic teddy bear with tan silky fur. He was about twice the size of a standard bear. "What about this guy?" "I think he's perfect." I pictured Hannah wrapping her arms around him and the calm he would bring her. "I like him." Isaac paid for the bear since I was, like always, broke. As we toted him out to Isaac's truck, he said, "Her parents are out to dinner with some new talent, so we should be good to go to the house." "What about Lucas? Won't he tell them if I go over there?" "Nah, Lucas is cool. He wouldn't rat you out. But to be on the safe side, I can distract him while you sneak into Hannah's room." "Sounds like a plan." "Has she decided what to do about the hospital bill?" Isaac asked. At the hospital, we'd tried to see if she could qualify for government assistance, but her parents made way too much money. She gets a pretty huge allowance from her parents. She says she's going to pay it down herself, even if she has to secretly sell stuff to get extra money. She really wants to keep it a secret. Isaac shook his head. "Just one more thing for her to worry about. Sometimes I wonder if she'd be better off just telling her parents. I'm sure they'd help her. They aren't monsters." "I know, but we have to respect Hannah's privacy." 5 minutes later, we pulled into Hannah's driveway. Isaac punched in the garage code and led me through the mudroom to the back staircase. He pressed a finger to his lips and held out a hand to stop me. I bit my lip to keep from giggling, and he crept forward to Lucas' door to see if he was in there. "Lucas, my man. How goes it?" "Hey, Isaac. Did Josh get you into that game? He was playing it all last weekend." Isaac edged into the room and mostly closed the door behind him. His hand stuck out, and he waved me forward. I tiptoed past him to Hannah's room. I cracked open her door enough to see her sitting on her bed, staring out toward Evan's window. I held a finger up to my lips as I pushed open the door wider so I could fit the bear through. Her eyes lit up at the sight of it. I shut the door behind me and rushed up to her, tossing the bear in her direction. She caught it in one swift move and hugged it to her chest. "Thank you so much." She set the bear aside and reached her arms out for me. I sat on the edge of her bed, and she crushed me to her. She held on to me for a long time, like she'd been desperate to hold on to someone and couldn't. We missed you at school today. Is Isaac here, too? Her door cracked open, and Isaac came inside. He grabbed the remote from her bedside table and turned on her big screen TV to one of the playlists of her favorite music videos. He cranked up the volume. That should block sound. Hannah's eyes glistened. Thank you so much for the bear. And for sneaking over Destiny. You're the best. Anytime. You've been going through some pretty rough stuff, he said, following her gaze to the window. I looked too and stifled a gasp. Layla walked past Evan's window. A muscle in Isaac's jaw tightened. He dropped the blinds and pulled the curtains shut. Usually, I'd say sunshine is a great idea for when you're feeling blue, but in this situation, you're better off with the curtains closed. I've been sitting here, watching them for the past hour. He's been playing her songs. That's it. We're getting you out of here, Isaac said. I grinned. Yep, and you're going to get dressed up, too. You need retail therapy. Since Hannah left the hospital, I'd been digging on the internet to learn more about depression. I discovered that it could help pull a person out of depression to get dressed up nicely and get out of the house. Some of the dimness in Hannah's eyes brightened. Retail therapy? Like at the mall? Wherever you want. And we can go to dinner, too, Isaac said. I opened Hannah's closet and shuffled through her clothes. The floor of her closet was a piled-up mess, and I couldn't tell if the clothes were clean or dirty. My mom would hate it if my closet looked like this. In the few items still hanging up, I found a navy and white striped sleeveless dress. This is adorable. It just needs some strappy sandals. And earrings. Something golden dangly. I think I'm going to give y'all some space. Isaac inched toward the door. What? Hannah cocked her head and grinned. You don't want to plug in my curling iron for me? You're just going to make Destiny do all the work? Isaac stammered, looking around like he had no idea where to find a curling iron in Hannah's room. She's just kidding, silly. I found her curling iron in a pile of scarves and laundry. I cleared a spot for it to rest and plugged it in for her. I'd never seen Hannah's room this bad. It looked like she hadn't cleaned it in months. Sure, it was messy before, but nothing like this. Nearly every surface in the room was covered with clothes, papers, books, or memorabilia. Hannah needed help digging out of this mess. I'd fall into depression if I had to live in this pigsty. It didn't help that she could see everything Evan was doing. I was tempted to show up with a needle and thread and sew her curtains together. And some duct tape to keep her from peeking out the edges. Isaac escaped to the office to catch up on work, and I helped Hannah just like she'd helped me when I needed cheering up. By the time she was fully dressed and had her hair and makeup done, she was in a better mood. I texted Isaac to meet us out at his truck. We sneaked past Lucas's room and down the back staircase. When we met Isaac by his truck, he said, "Looking good, ladies. Now I feel underdressed." Hannah had insisted that I get dressed up, too, so I had on one of her sundresses with a cardigan. I arched a brow at him. I'd never met a guy with better style than Isaac. His look was immaculate. Somehow, even when he was sweaty after football practice, he pulled off looking like he'd just stepped out of a sports equipment ad. I don't think I've ever seen you underdressed. Well, maybe we should change that, he said. TMI, Hannah said with a grossed out look on her face. That wasn't what I meant, Isaac said in an exasperated tone. I mean that Destiny needs to see the real me. The guy who lounges around the house in sweats. I'd like that, I said. I think it would be amazing to lounge around the house in sweats with you. I nudged him. There was something so intimate about the image. The two of us going about our everyday lives together. Dropping the act of having to always be perfect looking around each other all the time. Not to say it wasn't fun to get dressed up for each other. I loved the way Isaac always looked his best, but I wanted to know all of him. Not just the version he showed to polite company. The next morning, Hannah showed up at school again. Her hair was still a bit curled from our shopping trip the night before. We'd helped her pick out several new outfits to help her feel like herself again. Then we'd grabbed Chinese in the food court for dinner. Hannah had a bounce to her step I hadn't seen in a long time, except for during our trip to Opry Mills, just before she'd found out that Evan had moved on to Layla. She'd been so happy to go shopping that day. "Good morning," she sang as she spun the dial on her locker. "Aren't you in a good mood?" "I have new clothes to wear, of course, I'm in a good mood." And she didn't have to worry about hiding a pregnancy anymore. But I didn't dare mention that. During study hall, Hannah leaned toward me. "I feel torn about something." She twisted the strings of her hoodie around each other, winding them tighter and tighter. "What?" I asked. She bit her lip. "I feel like such a horrible person even thinking this." "No judgment," I said. "I promise." After what Hannah had been through, how could I judge her for anything? "I'm relieved," she said. "About my new situation." "You shouldn't feel bad. You did everything you could to make the best choice despite being in a super tough situation. That super tough situation is gone now. You're going to feel some relief." The crease between Hannah's eyebrows softened, like she'd been waiting a long time for someone to speak those words to her. How long had she been torturing herself over feeling this kind of relief? "Have you told Evan yet?" She shook her head. "Every time I think about telling him, I chicken out. And it's not like I can text him something like that." "No." She couldn't just text him that she'd miscarried his daughter. Could she? Did Evan deserve the respect she wanted to show him? He had the audacity to parade Layla around his room without bothering to shut his curtains. He knew she could see straight into his window. I didn't know what Hannah wanted to do, but I'd lost respect for him. The final bell rang, and the hall filled, students pouring from the classrooms like streams into a river. I opened my locker, stuffing my backpack with books. Hannah danced over to her locker. "This is the best day I've had in a while." "It's been a good day for me, too," I said. "I bet it has been good for you." Aspen leaned against the locker in front of me, her voice raised unnaturally like she was preparing to make an announcement to the hallway. "You know, getting away with it all." I stared back at her, horrified. Was she talking to Hannah or me? I turned to look at Hannah, and her face was pale. Aspen had drawn a crowd of onlookers, curious to know what she was talking about. "Don't act like you don't know what I mean," Aspen said, her voice like velvet. "I saw you getting into that car with Isaac on the Primus trip in the middle of the night. You try to act like you're so holy, clinging to your faith, but I know better." I glanced over at Hannah's terror-stricken face and made a snap decision. "What I do with Isaac is none of your business. Why do you care anyway? So you don't deny it?" "Nope." I slipped on my backpack and walked away like her words had no effect on me. But if I believed that, I was lying to myself.
Chapter 15, Isaac. I plucked out a tune on my guitar and smiled. My new song was coming along nicely. Sometimes I got so frustrated with my music, but tonight was one of those nights where I'd finally hit a breakthrough, and everything had flowed like a bursting dam. The notes fell into place, and a beautiful, heart-wrenching melody flowed from my fingertips. Success. The music poured from me until I finished the song. I exhaled, and all the stress from the past few days melted away. I pulled open the Book of Mormon and read the part at the end that the missionaries had urged me to study. I'd met with them earlier and told them I was ready to get baptized. We picked the second Saturday in June. It would be after graduation, so I wouldn't have any exams. Les Mis would be over. And I'd have plenty of time to think it over before then to be sure it was really what I wanted. But I was already pretty sure. I felt peace when I read the Book of Mormon. The missionaries had urged me to tell my parents tonight about the date I'd set. I wasn't eager to bring it up with them, but I knew they deserved to know. Would they ever support me in my decision? Maybe in time. It could take years, but I hoped that I could soften them up before June, so they could be there to support me. I set my guitar back into its case. I was ready. I knew what I had to do. I found them both in the family room, sitting on the couch together, watching reruns of I Love Lucy. "Hey, can I talk to both of you for a minute?" I asked. Dad reached up with the remote and paused the show. "What's up, son?" "I met with the missionaries again today, and I wanted to tell you that I've decided to get baptized." Mom held a hand up to her mouth to stifle a gasp, but Dad didn't move. He sat statue still, staring at me, his features carefully schooled into a neutral expression. I picked a date. It's the second Saturday in June. I figured it would be a good time since graduation will be over. Dad leaned forward, his brows knit. His calm behavior unnerved me. I was so used to him yelling and demanding that I do everything his way. This new demeanor was freaking me out because I couldn't tell what he was thinking. The yelling was at least predictable. I'd had years to adjust to his patterns, but now I had no idea what to expect from him next, and that scared me stupid. Finally, he spoke, his eyes still examining me like I was a science experiment gone wrong. "Are you doing this for her, or are you doing it for yourself?" I stared back at him. What was his game this time? "Because if you're doing it for yourself, then I support you, but I'm not getting that feeling from you." Yeah, right. Did he really think I'd believe his lies? All he wanted was to get inside my head and get me to doubt myself, my mind and ability to decide. Well, it would not work. You know what I think. You don't care what I believe. You want me to conform to what you think is right. And no matter what I say, you'll twist it into something that supports your side of things, like a Jedi mind trick. Dad scrunched his face up in genuine confusion. "I hope you know I would never do that to you. Haven't I always taught you to study everything out in your mind? This is your path. I can't give you your faith. I can do everything possible to teach you what I see as the right way, but ultimately you have to decide what feels right to you." "Mom?" I asked. "Will you support me in my decision without trying to brainwash me to think like you?" "Isaac," Dad said in his familiar harsh tone. "You will not disrespect your mother like that." "Sorry, Mom," I mumbled. I knew I'd taken it too far, but I was so frustrated with Dad that I'd taken it out on her. And that wasn't fair. This news had to be hard on her. She probably thought I was losing my salvation. How could I convince her to believe I wasn't? "Maybe y'all should talk to the missionaries, too. Go to the Mormon church with me. None of it is scary. They're regular people. Actually, they're great people. Destiny's family could be nicer, but that's only because it's hard on them to see me with Destiny. But everyone else has been wonderful. They aren't pushy about what they believe, either. Just come, and you'll see what I'm talking about." "If we come with you," Mom said, "will you reconsider your decision?" I weighed her suggestion for a moment. If they came to church, they might relax a lot about me getting baptized. They might not even ask me to reconsider once they've seen it for themselves. "Yes," I said. "If you visit Destiny's church with me, I will reconsider getting baptized." "Stephen," Mom said, squeezing his hand. "Is this something you're okay with?" A muscle tightened in his jaw as he stared at the floor in front of him in deep concentration. Finally, he nodded, though I could tell he didn't like the idea. I wasn't sure I liked the idea. What if he just came back nitpicking at everything said in the meeting, or worse yet, started religious debates in the middle of Sunday school? Maybe my idea hadn't been such a good one after all.
Chapter 16, Destiny. I scribbled down my notes furiously in geometry as Mrs. Smith wrote out the study guide on the board for our final exam. Her marker squeaked as she wrote. Jessie tapped me on the shoulder. I turned around to look at her. Is it true that you and Isaac snuck out together on the Primus trip? Why was she talking? I glanced across the aisle to Hudson, and he rolled his eyes at her. I turned back around and finished writing in my notebook. I wasn't answering her question. Especially not when it could get me in trouble or cause me to miss valuable information that might be on my final. In the middle of history, the office lady's voice called over the intercom, paging me to the front office. I exhaled and closed my binder, shoving it into my backpack. I felt all eyes on me as I walked from the room. "Busted," Jessie said under her breath as I passed. The empty hall seemed to watch me while I walked, as though it was waiting for an unspoken, impending doom. Isaac hadn't said anything about his dad finding out about our outing. But Aspen knew about it, and she'd probably told him. How could I still cover for Hannah? Isaac wouldn't have voluntarily told him anything about Hannah, but I don't know what he would have said to his dad if he had been questioned. I approached the window at the front office. The office lady looked at me, a stern expression on her face. "Dr. Robinson would like to see you in his office." "Yes, ma'am," I said, squeezing the straps on my backpack until they became squished up wads in my hands. "Go ahead and knock. He's waiting for you." I gave a tentative knock, wishing I could appear more confident. He opened the door, and I stepped inside. He had been standing by the window, and now he circled the desk and sat down. I took the seat across from him, looking up at the quote on the wall. "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." It was a good thing Dr. Robinson wasn't in charge of where I went after I died. Sometimes, I wondered if he got excited thinking about all the people he imagined going to hell. Did he sit around rubbing his hands together, imagining sinners burning in a lake of fire because they deserved it? "I'm assuming you know why you're in here." He leaned forward in his chair. "I don't, actually." He gave me a thin-lipped smile. "Do you deny that you left the hotel and got into a car in the middle of the night while on the Primus trip?" I stared back at him without flinching. "I don't deny it." "Can you tell me where you were going?" "No, sir. I can't." I kept my gaze on his, willing the trembling inside me to stay still. "And why is it you can't tell me?" "I can't say. Can't or won't." A frustrated edge crept into his tone. "Won't." I held my back ramrod straight. "Then you leave me no choice." He opened a drawer and pulled out a yellow form and filled it out, his pen scratching over the paper. He set the pen down and pushed the paper across the table. It was a declaration of suspension for a week. I bit my lip. I would miss rehearsals. Opening night was only 2 weeks away. But I couldn't incriminate Hannah. I wouldn't do it. Because it wouldn't be suspension for her. She would be facing expulsion from the school. I wondered about Isaac. Was he getting suspended, too? Or was he off the hook because he was the headmaster's son? "You can finish your day out today. Your suspension begins tomorrow morning." "What about my tests?" I knew nothing about how suspension worked. When I got to lunch, I wanted to talk to Isaac about the suspension, but Hannah was glued to my side the entire time. I didn't want her to know and do something stupid like give herself up. It wasn't until Primus that I finally got a moment with Isaac alone. I caught him backstage while Hannah was singing her solo. "I got called into your dad's office today." "What? Why didn't you tell me before?" "Because I don't want Hannah to know." "What happened?" he asked. "I got a week of suspension." "What?" he hissed. "He can't do that." "I wouldn't deny that I left with you in the middle of the night." I shrugged. "He didn't suspend you?" "Not yet. But if he doesn't, I want him to take back your suspension because none of this is your fault." I still broke school rules. I could have gone to Mrs. Smith. But it wasn't like we were leaving for a bad reason. Rules are rules, Isaac. But sometimes the rules need to be broken because there's something bigger at play that the rules haven't taken into account. "I know," I whispered, looking up into his beautiful brown eyes. I had broken so many rules for him throughout our relationship. And I was a better, kinder person because of Isaac. Following the rules wasn't as important as caring for someone. He taught me that, and it changed my life. I cared more about someone's feelings now than I did about a cold, unfeeling rule. Rules were there to protect us, but they didn't have thoughts and reasoning minds. Sometimes the rule didn't fit the situation. Sometimes the rule prevented us from following avenues that could lead us to great opportunities in our lives. I understood now what Hannah meant when she'd said rules are made to be broken that first night at the retreat, so many months ago now. Her mindset was extreme, but it opened my eyes to a world of exploration. Hannah taught me to take risks and to have fun. Before I met her, I was so serious about life that I hadn't really lived. My life consisted of school, chores, and church. Sure, I had the occasional game of paintball, and those were fun. But I was so worried about messing up that I took no risks. When I started taking those risks, I lived a school year of more life experience than my entire 15 years of previous existence. I'd lived through the best kisses and the worst heartbreak. Without Hannah or Isaac, would I have continued the rest of my life playing it safe? Never getting heartbroken. Never kissing the guy of my dreams or my brother's best friend. I regretted none of it. Every memory, the good and the nightmarish, were part of my story now. Looking back on it showed me a beautiful patchwork of memories that combined into an intricate pattern of blues and reds, pure whites and pitch blacks, sunny yellows and bright greens like the quilt my grandmama made for me when I was little. I'm glad to be on this adventure with you, I said, my face upturned to Isaac's. His eyes crinkled at the corners. This has definitely been an adventure. You can't do this, a female voice said behind me. Do what? I asked, turning around. We weren't kiss, the last word caught in my throat. Hannah's face was a mix of outrage and dread. Her voice sounded so strangled that I hadn't even recognized it. You can't take the blow for me. She stepped closer, lowering her tone to a strained whisper. Suspension? You were saving my life. Hannah, my mind raced for the right words. She crossed her arms. I have to tell them the truth. It's only a week, I said. They could throw you out of the show if they find out. Maybe I can make a deal with my uncle. Tell him that if he agrees to let me stay in the show, I can explain why you were gone in the middle of the night. Maybe Mr. Bird would stand up for me. I shook my head. It's better this way. They'll kick you out of the school. And you think that's really the worst thing in the world? My parents forced me to come here, anyway. But what about Primus? I asked. I don't need Primus. I can just go back to my private choir. What can we do to help you? Isaac said. You're encouraging her? I threw him an accusatory glare. It's her choice, Destiny. I growled in frustration and then frowned. Hannah, you're worth being suspended for. You taking a punishment for me won't help, Hannah said. If you want to help, be there with me when I tell my parents. I don't think they'll be as hard on me if the two of you are there. I can do that, but don't you think it will make your parents even more upset to know you've been hanging out with me? We go to the same school. They know we're friends. After they see how you've helped, their hearts will soften. She has a point, Isaac said. How did you find out I was suspended? I only told Isaac. Abigail overheard you talking and told me when my song was over. Our private spot wasn't so private after all. Are you sure you want to do this? I asked. I'm tired of hiding. The look on her face was one of relief. I need to make things right. It made sense. She had to come to terms with the consequences of her choices and wanted to set her life back on track again.
Chapter 17, Isaac. Hannah asked Destiny and me to come over at 8 to tell her parents. She figured it would be the best time because they would be home from work and finished with dinner. I didn't know what excuse Destiny gave her family, but somehow, they agreed to let her go out with me on a school night. When I arrived at her house to pick her up, her mom opened the door. Isaac's here, Destiny. Destiny came around the corner, dressed in a nice blouse and dark jeans. She looked classy and responsible. "Don't stay out too late, y'all. Don't forget how early seminary comes in the morning," Mrs. Clark warned. "We shouldn't be more than an hour, but if it's longer, I'll call," I promised. "That's very appreciated," Mrs. Clark said, giving me a polite smile. Destiny was quiet on the drive over. "Nervous?" I asked, eyeing her tapping foot when we pulled up to a stoplight. She blew out a tense breath of air. "I have no idea what to expect." "Are you more scared for Hannah, or for how they'll treat you when you show up on their doorstep?" "Both." I reached over and took her hand, my gaze leaving the red light to look into her frightened blue eyes. "I will be there for you the entire time. My aunt and uncle are good people. They're just a little misled. You'll have both Hannah and me to vouch for you. Anyway, they'll realize pretty quickly that they have bigger problems to deal with." Destiny let out a tense laugh. "So, how'd you convince your parents to let you come out tonight?" I asked. "I told them the truth," she admitted. "I called Hannah first to get her permission. But they already knew about the suspension, so I was about to be in the hugest trouble at home." "Of course. The school must have called them." "Yep. My mom was so mad when she picked me up from school. I told her it was a big mix-up, and that I'd explain it to her." "How'd she react when you told her the truth?" "She felt devastated for Hannah. But I think she thought what we did was heroic." "Your mom is cool then." "She can be," Destiny agreed. I laughed. "I hear a little hesitation there. Hey, everyone has a beef with their mom over one thing or another. Why do you think I'm laughing?" "Mostly, my mom's cool, but she has her moments, too." "I wish I could get to know your mom better," Destiny said wistfully. "That's something we need to change," I said. "And now you've said that, my heart rate just doubled." I laughed. "You think it wasn't scary picking you up for the Valentine's banquet? Your dad is terrifying. He gets this look in his eyes." Destiny doubled over in laughter. "I know what you mean. But your dad is scarier. Especially when I have to go meet with him in his office all by myself." My smile disappeared. "I'm sorry about my dad. Believe it or not, I think he's getting better." "Better?" Destiny's voice was incredulous. "Yeah. Ever since he thought I'd gotten you pregnant and realized I hadn't, he's chilled out big time. It was a big shock to him. It's like it set his priorities straight. I mean, he knows we're dating, and he's not taking my phone or my keys away. He knows about my baptism date, and he said he'd come to church to check it out." "Are you serious?" "I can't imagine him setting foot in a Mormon church. Miracles happen every day." "Are you sure that's a miracle?" Destiny asked with suspicion in her voice. "It seems like he has an agenda. It's just too easy." "I thought of that, too. I wouldn't be surprised if he plans to go in there to convince everyone they're wrong." Destiny's laugh rang clear, full of silliness. "I could totally see that." I parked in front of Hannah's house. Destiny stopped laughing, like she'd suddenly remembered to be nervous again. We walked to the front door, hand in hand, and I rang the doorbell. "Do you know if they're expecting us?" I asked Destiny. Hannah didn't say. The door opened, and Aunt Bethany's eyes landed on me first. "Well, hey there, Isaac. What's up?" Then her gaze shifted to Destiny, and her smile faded. "Hannah invited us to come over tonight to talk with you." "Did she tell you?" I asked. "Nah. She didn't mention anything." She paused for a moment and tucked a strand of her chin-length hair behind her ear. "Come on in." I squeezed Destiny's hand, and we stepped across the wide threshold together. "Where's Hannah?" I asked. "She should be up in her room." She turned around and called out, "Hannah, you have visitors." Hannah appeared at the top of the staircase. She was in her Bethel sweatpants, and she wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. I squeezed Destiny's hand again as my eyebrows drew together. I hated seeing Hannah in so much pain. "Hannah, what's wrong, baby girl?" Aunt Bethany wrapped an arm around her daughter's shoulders as she came down the stairs. "Where's Dad?" she asked. "I need to talk to both of you. Go sit on the couch in the family room with your friends. I'll get your dad." Destiny slid onto the couch beside Hannah. Hannah wrapped her arms around herself and buried her face in Destiny's hair. She let out a pitiful sob. "I thought I could do this, but it's so much scarier than I thought it would be." Destiny patted a comforting hand on Hannah's back. "You can do this. We're here for you." Hannah's parents trotted down the stairs together, her dad's brow knit in concern. "Hey, Uncle Derek," I said. He was a tall, well-built man, immaculately dressed. He spent a lot of his time around celebrities and his appearance and smooth manners had given him the advantage in the competitive world of musicians. When he wasn't going to parties and networking events, he was at the office or the gym. Hannah hardly even saw the guy. I saw a lot more of him since we worked together. "What's the matter, Hannah Banana?" Hannah lifted her head from Destiny's shoulder and looked at her parents, who were now seated on the other end of the sectional, staring at her. "I have something to tell you both. I know you don't want Destiny here, but I asked her to come because, starting tomorrow, she's facing a week of suspension because she was trying to help and protect me." Aunt Bethany leaned forward. "Go on." Hannah swallowed and pushed a few stray hairs back from her face. "I've been hiding something from you since January." "What is it, baby?" her mom said. "You know you can tell us anything." "I was pregnant." A wave of shock, horror, and then confusion crossed her parents' faces simultaneously. "What do you mean by was?" her dad asked slowly. "I lost the baby. On the Primus trip. Destiny found me on the bathroom floor in the middle of the night. She called Isaac, and they took me to the hospital. I didn't want them to tell anyone. Except Aspen saw them and told Uncle Stephen. She thought they were trying to escape for a romantic outing. And Destiny wouldn't tell him the truth because she was trying to protect me." Hannah's words broke into sobs. "Why didn't you come to us in the beginning?" her mom asked, her voice soft and compassionate. "I can't believe you've been bearing this burden on your own for months. I was planning to tell you soon. I was getting bigger. And I'd felt her kick a few times." Tears ran down Aunt Bethany's cheeks. "Her. It was a girl." She wiped at her face. "You must have been so scared. Is this why you've been so sick all winter? You noticed that?" Hannah asked, wiping a tear away with the back of her hand. "Of course, I noticed. I heard you throwing up all the time." Her mom grabbed a box of tissues from the end table and tucked it next to Hannah. "I should have known what was going on." Her eyes got a faraway look in them, and her mouth turned downward. Uncle Derek stared at the carpet, his mouth pressed closed. "I wish I could have been there for you," Aunt Bethany said. "You didn't know," I said. "Destiny and I have done our best to help Hannah. Her doctor suggested that she get counseling to help her with the grief." "Who's the father?" Uncle Derek growled. "Evan. The Bellingham's boy. Next door." He waved a hand toward their house. Hannah nodded. "Where's he tonight?" "I don't understand why he's not sitting right next to you with his parents instead of Isaac and Destiny." "He doesn't know," Hannah said. "Well, he knew about the pregnancy, but he doesn't know I lost her." "He's been pretty preoccupied," I said. "Oh, with that little blonde thing he keeps bringing over to his house." Aunt Bethany spat. Uncle Derek put his phone up to his ear. "Hey, Greg, I know it's a little late, but we have something serious going on over here that involves your son, and we think you ought to bring him and your wife over here to join in our discussion." "Great. See you soon." Dad! What are you doing? Hannah gasped. That boy needs to take responsibility. He has good parents, and they need to know what he's been doing. A knock sounded on the front door, and Uncle Derek got up to answer it in several large strides. He welcomed the Bellinghams inside. It was almost comical to see the confused looks on their parents' faces in contrast to the panicked look on Evan's face. His parents took the 2 armchairs, and Hannah's dad got a chair from the kitchen for Evan. After everyone was settled into their seats, Uncle Derek said, "You're probably wondering why you're here. Hannah has just told us that, until recently, we were all about to become grandparents." Mrs. Bellingham compressed her lips into a thin line, and Mr. Bellingham looked between Hannah and Evan and shook his head, pinching the bridge of his nose. "You're kidding, right?" he said, his hand still covering his eyes, like if he couldn't see us, the news would go away. "No, Greg, I'm not kidding. Hannah miscarried last weekend. She's been through a terrible ordeal." Evan's face turned a strange shade of green but said nothing. "Evan," his mother said. "Is what they're saying true?" "I'm sorry, Hannah," he said. "I didn't know. It's over now." She kept her eyes averted from him. "Wait," his mom said. "What part didn't you know?" "I didn't know she miscarried." "So, you knew she was pregnant?" "Yes, Mom. I knew." She squeezed her eyes shut and took a few deep breaths, like she was fighting to control her temper. "When were you planning to tell us?" Mr. Bellingham demanded. "I wasn't sure what Hannah would do," he said. "But we were going to tell you soon." "What do you mean what she would do?" "She kept talking about keeping the baby or putting it up for adoption. She went back and forth a lot." "And you didn't think adult input would have been helpful?" his dad asked in exasperation. "We were planning to tell you any day." Hannah was getting to where she was showing. It's not like she could hide it forever. "Look," Hannah said. "None of that matters now. What matters is that someone caught Destiny leaving our hotel in the middle of the night, trying to get me to the hospital, and now she's facing a week of suspension." "Destiny's not getting suspended," Aunt Bethany said. "I'll call Stephen tonight, and we'll get it set straight." I didn't know whether to breathe a sigh of relief or to brace myself for Hannah's punishment. But I prayed Dad would be merciful to Hannah.
Chapter 18, Hudson. Bright overhead lights lit the grass of the baseball diamond. Isaac was up to bat. I watched him hit the ball with a crack and take off full speed to first base before Acorn Creek's team could catch the ball. "Go Isaac," Olivia screamed. I loved how enthusiastic she got over the game. "Oh, so you don't hate him anymore?" I asked her. She shrugged. "He's not so bad once you get to know him." I elbowed her in the ribs, and she squirmed. "I could have told you that a long time ago." Isaac made a home run, and the crowd went wild. Will Green stood up to bat and struck out, signaling the end of the inning. "I'm starving," Olivia said. "Let me buy you some snacks then." She grinned sideways at me, blushing a little. "I guess I could let you do that." Turning to Destiny, she asked, "Can you watch my purse for me while we go get snacks?" "Sure," Destiny shrugged. "You want anything?" I asked. "I'm good," she said. "I still have an energy bar left over from earlier today." "Okay," I said. We stood up from our seats in the stands and shuffled past an annoyingly endless line of knees. We climbed to the bottom and crossed the grass in front of the bleachers to the little building set up for concessions. The line took forever, and when we finally made it up to the stand, I turned to Olivia. "What do you want?" "Sprite and popcorn." "One Sprite and a large popcorn." I turned to her. "Are you okay with extra butter?" "Always." I turned back to the kid running the concession stand. "Extra butter." "I'll have a Mountain Dew." My stomach roared as I watched him pour melted butter over my popcorn. He handed us our drinks, and Olivia grabbed the bucket of popcorn, tucking her Sprite under the same arm she had wrapped around the popcorn. She looked like she might drop it, but I shrugged. Olivia knew what she was doing. She grabbed handfuls of popcorn and shoved them into her mouth. The line behind us had gotten even longer than the one we'd stood in for a good 5 minutes. Well, someone was hungry, I teased. Dude, I'm starving. I haven't eaten since lunch, she said between mouthfuls. Her phone buzzed, and she grabbed it from her back pocket, punching in her code. Aspen rounded the corner of the concession stand, walking and texting at the same time, unconsciously heading straight for Olivia. Her hair was down and curled all fancy. I watched the entire thing play out in front of me like something from a slapstick comedy. Their bodies collided, smashing Olivia's arm that held the popcorn and Sprite. The lid popped off the flimsy cup, splashing all over Aspen. Popcorn flew a good 3 feet into the air, showering onto Aspen's now drenched hair. A phone hit the pavement with a sickening crack. Aspen's ear-piercing scream ripped at my eardrums, and gasps and whispers surrounded us. My screen is cracked, and you got Sprite all over it, Aspen screeched. She grabbed a stack of napkins and furiously wiped at her phone. Olivia stood in shock, watching. She stammered. I'm so sorry. Aspen is going to kill her, someone whispered from behind us in line. I glanced over my shoulder. Most of the people in the line were middle schoolers. A bunch of them were guys Olivia had rejected. I spotted a few of the girls who hated Olivia for getting attention from the guys they liked. Because Olivia had turned down so many of the guys, it had turned into a challenge between them to see who could get Olivia to go out with them. Supposedly, they'd taken bets. Unknown to them, I'd won. Aspen snatched Olivia's phone from her hand. You mess with my phone, then I mess with yours. Stop! Olivia screamed. Aspen, put her phone down, I demanded. But she ignored us both. She scrolled through Olivia's unlocked phone like a hungry cat at a seafood market. What do we have here? She said with a mock gasp. Olivia and Hudson are secretly dating? Olivia's face went white, and she glanced around at the people standing in line, all of whom apparently had nothing better to do than to watch the scene unfolding a few feet from them. I reached for the phone, but Aspen spun away from my grasp. Cut it out. You can't just go through her phone like that. Unfortunately, it wasn't like I could tackle her to get Olivia's phone back. I held back a growl of frustration. Aspen scrolled through messages, shouting out the juiciest tidbits she could find. We can't tell anyone I'm seeing you like this. I could get in so much trouble, she read. I waited until she was absorbed in the messages before I struck again. Without warning, I reached out and snatched the phone from Aspen's hands. She screwed up her face in annoyance before recomposing it into a syrupy sweet smile. Thanks for a fun night, y'all. And she sauntered toward the parking lot. Olivia slowly turned around to face the line of people behind her. You're dating Hudson? Keegan sneered. I thought you said you didn't date. We aren't officially together, she said to explain. We saw him buy you a drink and popcorn like you were all cutesy and together. It's kind of obvious, the girl with braids said, putting her hands on her hips. You're nothing but a hypocrite and a liar. And liars go to hell. Hey, Liddy, let's go eat what's left of that popcorn. I pointed to the stand. Liars go to hell, Keegan repeated, prompting others to join in with their own taunts. Olivia stood, dazed until I tugged on her elbow. Come on. She followed me to the bleachers. Gross. She swiped at the Sprite on her plaid shirt. It's a good thing I have a t-shirt under this, she said. I took the popcorn from her, and she set down what was left of her Sprite. What happened? Destiny asked. A look of terror flashed across Olivia's face. It wasn't like Destiny didn't know we were sort of dating, but I guess Olivia didn't want her to know how she'd been humiliated in front of all her friends. Olivia had a bit of a collision with Aspen. Destiny cringed. Who? I bet that was bad. What did she do? Olivia looked away, tears welling up in her eyes. What is it, Livy? Destiny said, her voice tender. Olivia shook her head, biting her bottom lip to keep it from quivering. What did she do to you? Instead of answering, Olivia pulled off her outer shirt and folded it up so the sticky parts were on the inside. Why aren't you saying anything? Destiny demanded. She sounded like she was out for blood. Olivia had told me that Aspen almost got her suspended. She didn't know many of the details, since she had only heard bits and pieces of Destiny's conversation with her parents. But she knew enough to know it involved Aspen. Olivia shoved the plaid shirt into her purse. Do you want me to tell her? I asked gently. Olivia shrugged. It's fine. She'll probably hear about it anyway. I recounted the story to Destiny. By the time I'd finished, Destiny was shaking with rage. What is wrong with her? Destiny demanded. Why is she so determined to make everyone's life miserable? Some people are just like that, I said. She's just an awful person, Destiny said. I can't wait until she graduates, and I never have to see her again. Whoa! I'd never heard Destiny trash talk someone like that before. Olivia tugged down her t-shirt. It was neon purple and said I heart books. It looked exactly like something she would wear. I loved listening to how excited she got when she talked about her favorite characters. Her eyes lit up, and she talked faster and faster. For the rest of the night, I kept Olivia entertained, but now and then her eyes drifted off, staring at nothing, and a little frown showed up on her lips. When the game was over, we met up with Michael just outside the baseball field. Ready to go home? He asked the girls. Destiny made a face. Hold on. I want to tell Isaac what a great job he did. Michael let out an exasperated breath. Can't you text him? I'm starving, and I'm dying to go home and relax. Can you wait just 1 second? Destiny asked. Michael looked at his watch. Okay. It's been 1 second. Don't be a punk, Michael, she said, crossing her arms. Her face changed from irritation to excitement as she spotted Isaac coming from the dugout. She wrapped her arms around his neck and brushed noses with him. You look so hot in that uniform, she said. Gag, Olivia said. Michael's grossed out expression matched hers, and I couldn't help but laugh. Hey, I said, walking up to Destiny and Isaac as they walked toward the parking lot. Not to interrupt or anything, but I noticed something strange about Aspen I thought you might want to know about. Isaac arched an eyebrow. What's that? She and Olivia had a little collision earlier tonight, and I swear I smelled weed on her. A muscle twitched in Isaac's jaw, and I got the impression that this wasn't news to him. But he didn't like it either. I thought she smelled funny, Olivia said. But I've never smelled weed, so I didn't recognize the smell. Destiny filled Isaac in on Aspen's cruel treatment toward Olivia. Aren't people high on weed supposed to be more chill, not high-strung and evil? I pointed out. Maybe it's not enough for her anymore, Isaac mumbled. You think she's moving on to something stronger? Destiny asked. Isaac shook his head. I don't know, and I don't want to know. She's not part of my life anymore. Destiny watched Isaac's face closely, as if she was trying to decide if she believed him. I wasn't sure myself whether he really meant it or if he was only saying it to convince himself.